Welcome to Setnotes. Today we're immersing ourselves in the dynamic world of filmmaking with Kit Lynch-Robinson, a director renowned for his contribution to hit TV shows like Top Gear, The Grand Tour and Limitless, as well as his captivating car and stunt-driven commercials. Kit takes us behind the scenes, sharing fascinating stories from idea inception to the execution of adrenaline-pumped stunts. Throughout our conversation, he provides invaluable insight into the director's craft, the evolution of technology, and pearls of wisdom for aspiring filmmakers. Plus, stay tuned for what promises to be the ultimate masterclass in shooting cars.
And action!
A lot of your work has been kind of characterized by challenge. You know, if you think about your work, certainly your work on the Grand Tour and the Top Gear work, that was sort of setting challenges, was it? And kind of resolving the challenges within the show, or?
Yeah. So, I mean, yes. So I think there's a few different aspects to my work, and you've got car commercials, and then you've got sort of real stuff where it's sort of done for real, and that's very much informed by my TV work, which is, I mean, it's sort of factual entertainment. I can't call myself a documentary maker because I'm not up in Sheffield drinking cheap white wine. It's not that sort of, I'm not saving the world with my documentaries, but it is unscripted and factual. Top Gear and Grand Tour was very much, you've got the magazine aspects of a show where, you're reviewing a car and they're sort of high octane and glossy, sexy shots of cars. And then you've got the big challenges, the big specials, as we used to call them, where, it's a sort of 15-day road trip for 1,500 miles across the wilderness. And, with them, it was sort of very much here's the sort of the thrust of the show. Here's the sort of the why are we doing this? And then you kind of just set off, and we'd recce it, a producer would go and recce it, and then a producer and director would go and recce it, and then we'd go and shoot it. And it was like this sort of caravan of very talented humans traveling across the wilderness, making a film, having an adventure, and filming what happens. But it's not, you don't just turn up and film what happens. It's sort of, it's a very delicate balance of setting some stuff up and allowing stuff to develop.
So how do you see the role of the director within that? Because you have like quite big personalities that have, I would imagine, have a creative opinion, like Jeremy Clarkson, for example, would have quite a strong opinion. How would you go into that situation as a director and get the best out of it? What would your process be for that?
Jeremy Clarkson is a divisive character, and lots of people love him, lots of people hate him. What I will always say about him, he is so invested in the creative. He is such a driving force in that creative, and all three of them are, and all three of them are journalists. And I think that's what separates them from all the other people that have come before or come after them, trying to do the Freddie Flintoffs of the world or whatever. They make an okay show, but because they're not journalists, they don't understand story, and they don't understand how things, the upside down triangle of a journalist's article kind of thing. You kind of got to, you've got to set everything up, and then you allow it to develop. As a director on one of those specials, you've got big personalities, but they've got an incredible chemistry, and they're professionals, and they are willing, they're willing to sleep in the dirt if you need them to. If it's going to make the story better, if it's going to make the film better, they will do the hard yards. And I think that's something that's a real testament to them and why the show was so good. Obviously, if there is a 5-star hotel around, then we'll stay in it, because why wouldn't you? But if we go through a bit of the journey where there is nothing, then you're in a tent by the side of a road.
These ideas, where they birth from? Is it a kind of brainstorm, or was it kind of...
It's a sort of bit of a brainstorm, a bit of a, and it can come from anywhere. It could come from, I saw this weird tank on Instagram and, it's a personal tank. Or it can come from, my mate went to Colombia and had an amazing time. Or
And this has come from conversation with the producers and presenters. And
presenters,
yeah.
It was very much a sort of a big, area. Jeremy would come up with a lot. And then we would go and research it, and we'd develop it up, and it just sort of is that sense of it becomes, there's a seed of an idea, and then it goes through hundreds of drafts, and I think that's something else that they did, we did as that the Top Gear Grand Tour, Clarkson, Hammond, May years. We would do 100 drafts of an idea before we went to shoot, and then still shooting. We'd still be changing it as we're going along, and things would develop. Whereas other people, they do 2 or 3 drafts, and that's good enough. And it's like, it doesn't, it lacked the sort of the development, it lacked the journalistic integrity, it lacked the why, it was like, that'd be fun. It's like,
why?
It's got to have a reason why.
Yeah.
However ridiculous and preposterous and moronic our ideas were, it was always rooted back into a real, there was a bit of journalistic integrity somewhere there.
Yeah,
and I think that's really important.
Yeah, so there's like a rigor that you go through with the idea, so test it for leaks kind of, and
and it's like, why? There was a I was talking to a producer recently at the Grand Tour rap party, the final ever for now rap party, and they were saying about an idea about machines that put cones out quicker on the motorway, and how that would be hilarious. We could make machines, and James could have a slow one that's precise, and Rich could have one that blows up, or whatever. And Jeremy was like, but that's not, there's no story there. People don't think that roadworks are slow because the cones go out slowly. They think roadworks are slow because people don't do things quick enough. It's the workers aren't working hard. It's not. So yes, it would make a fun, stupid film, but it would have no depth, no journalistic integrity, and that, I think, is really important. And
you'd lose your way then. The identity of the show would change, I guess.
Well, yeah, and I think you saw it with the the newer versions where it just becomes sort of a bit it's 3 bantering lads on a holiday, and you're like, it's kind of, which is fun. And I think there's an awful lot of people in television that are trying to do, it's based on 3 men in a boat, right? I mean, it's a book written 150 years ago, or however many, don't know. But it's nothing new to have 3 friends on a holiday thing. But so many of those sort of stories, they get lost, and it just becomes sort of, it's meaningless fluff. And I think the longevity and the popularity of Clarkson, Hammer, May chemistry is so much because of the depth to the story and the depth to the films. They weren't just fluff. They weren't just, there was always a why. So going back to your original question of what a director's role is keeping the presenters happy, making sure that you've got great DOPs and operators who are there, and they're going to get the shot for you. You just got to keep an eye on what they're getting, and just make sure that you set the scene up, that you're going to get that. But it's TV. We don't care about lighting. We just shoot in whatever light. We just get on with it. And sort of as a director, my role is very much a sort of to keep the story honest, to keep the presenters honest, to keep asking, to keep challenging them, go, is that right? Should we be doing this? Throwing stupid ideas in of like, what if we did that? Does that work? And, making them think. And it's sort of more about just sort of keeping everyone's morale up. 15 days in a tent is, when you're working 14 hours a day, is hard work. And it's sort of, there's a pastoral care element to it. It's sort of leading the charge. It's kind of, it felt like we were, some shit special forces team. We were like, we're in these like, all like the shit UN. We'd always drive around in Land Cruisers, and they all had numbers on them, or ABC, and we had whip antennae for Motorola, like long range radios. We had like more gear than you could ever need, like just cameras and things. And someone would always have like, oh, this is a UV straw. You can drink water out of a puddle with it. It's like, yeah, but we've got a catering tent with us. We don't need,
so it's a fantasy of being kind of in the SAS.
100%.
Having craft services next to you.
Exactly. It was just like, it was so much fun. It was like being sort of Indiana Jones and Steven Spielberg all at once. Right. It was kind of like, it was this really fun and amazing, very talented humans who all get on very well as well. So it's like this sort of, the loyalty from, I've got to mention Andy Willman, who's the exec producer, who's been with the three for years and is the fourth voice that you don't know you hear until you meet him. And then you're like, oh, wow. Okay. Makes sense. Him and Jeremy have had such an incredible loyalty to their crew. The couple of the DOPs and a couple of the soundmen, have been working with them for 25 years. They're like, and it's sort of almost like when you when they would find someone they like, they would hold on to them.
Becomes part of the family.
Yeah. We're like a dysfunctional family. It was, but there's a lot of love there. There's a lot of,
But that you can feel that energy when you're watching. I mean, to me, it's like sort of Last of the Summer Wine meets Bond. Do you know what I mean? It was kind of.
We always. Yeah. I mean, we always did think it was Last of the Summer Wine because it is, three sort of aging men falling over, and it was fun. But I mean, it was an amazing thing to be part of, the Top Gear Grand Tour thing. It's sort of, it's not art, and some of my more art school friends would be like sort of very disparaging of this sort of very populist TV show that I work on, but actually it sort of touched so many people.
Well, I was going to say it's become an institution, hasn't it? And it's got a legacy to it as well. So it's become part of your legacy I mean, you must be quite proud of having that
I feel incredibly privileged to have been part of something so culturally relevant and that is going to be remembered for years, and you kind of go, my small part in that was I feel amazing like, and I think it was really sort of, and this is something we can talk on in a minute, but as a director, I'm not the classic beret wearing kind of pseudo intellectual sort of cinema snob. I'm very much a sort of different sort of director, and that's I've learned to come to terms with that. But when you talk about Top Gear and stuff, and I did some work for Royal Marines, and I was chatting to them, and they were saying, oh, when we come back from being on patrol in Afghan, and we come into the mess and someone's got Top Gear on, and we watch that, it sort of takes you away from the shit that you've just been out in, and you're like, oh fuck,
that's got some value. It
does. It means a lot to some people.
I mean, there's something lovely, beautifully unpretentious about that as well. It's like, how do you judge something? Particularly if you want to educate someone, you need to entertain them first, right?
100%.
So judging your work on the populace, value of the populace, and how many people it touches, and as opposed to some kind of intellectual, sort of what's it, beard sort of,
absolutely.
I think you're on, it's getting out to more people and it's moving more people, so that's got immense value in itself.
It has, and I've always tried to sort of have my cake and eat it, of like, I love doing the shows like Top Gear Grand Tour, which are so popular and of a they're expertly made, there's undeniable, and some of the people working on that are the best people in the world at what they do. But it isn't, you don't have that sense of, I don't know, emotional gravitas that you would in an art house film or whatever, because it is just a different thing, and that's fine. But I'd kind of like the idea of, maybe I could do, sort of culturally set. Maybe I could wear a beret and a monocle.
Well, you still have time for that. Yeah.
I don't know.
So let's talk a bit about how you kind of moved into commercials then, because you started your career in commercials, in advertising, didn't you? And then you went into TV. Yeah. And then you came kind of, well, you do both now.
Well, right, that's the thing. It's like, am I a commercials director or a TV director? And I don't actually know. I've given up trying to answer that question, and I just say I'm a director now.
So do people in TV see you as the commercials guy, and people in commercials see you as the TV guy? Or?
Not anymore. I think, I mean, advertising has a certain, oh, he's a TV guy, isn't he? And you're like, okay. But I think now, I've sort of, I think maybe it's taken me longer, rather than just concentrate on one thing, and shoebox, pigeonhole yourself into like, oh, he's the guy who does lens flare-y stuff, I'm, it's probably taken me longer to establish myself, because I've been establishing myself in both fields.
Yeah, but then that gives you strength now, I would imagine, because you have the option to work, successfully in both areas.
Again, I feel very lucky. I'm when there's a downturn in commercials, there's probably a TV show around, or when there's no TV around, there's probably some commercials. And with commercials, you can work all the way around the world, and it just sort of. Yes, I feel. I don't know whether I'm just a director, and I think that's a really nice place to be, where I go, I actually just care about the job in front of me, whether it's TV or whether it's commercials. And you can borrow and cross-pollinate from skill sets. They are different, but they're not that different. It's still getting the best out of your team. And what I love about commercials is the attention to detail of, like, every frame is sort of thought about, and there's an essence to what you're doing for every frame. Whereas TV, it's sort of a bit wider. You're doing it. It might be a 60-minute or an hour and a half episode. It might be a 35-minute episode, but it's sort of it's more about story and what's the essence of that story, and how do you bring that out. But you can go, oh, well, actually, I did this thing on a commercial, and actually it would work really well using that bit of gear, or that sort of type of technique, and it allows you to just get better as a filmmaker.
I love that, looking through your work and firstly seeing the development of your voice as a director, but also seeing the counterpoint from really good TV to a really refined commercial, like the Lexus commercial, for example, and that kind of like that sort of the visual purity of that. It's kind of like this wonderfully executed kind of optical illusion in a sense.
Yeah.
And going from from one to the other, and there's still a through line of seeing your kind of voice between the two of them, and they're both very, very different sort of.
Thank you, because that's really lovely to hear. But it's kind of like, it is that thing of like, Lexus was such
Should we have a look at it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, what was amazing about these is that the creative was someone I'd worked with before on Non-Stop Fernando, and we won gold at Cannes.
So here we go. Here's a this is Pulse, right?
Yeah. So this was all shot for real. I mean, we were looking at actually painting the heart on the desert, but we didn't. We did it in post in the end, but we did it in. It was sort of quite a weird thing to do in terms of the previs. Let me step back a bit.
Step back. The initial idea.
So the initial idea, if you
just pause it there for a second.
If you
can you loop that? Yeah, we're just going to loop it. So,
all right.
Yeah.
So say that is your object.
Yeah.
You take a picture from a specific angle, any angle you want, but you just record the angle.
Yeah.
And you take that picture, and then you flatten that out in Photoshop, and you print it.
Yeah.
And you put it on a flat piece of land.
Yeah.
And then you put your camera back where your original camera was, and it looks like it's standing up. That's essentially
that's the idea. The basic idea of the optical illusion that
exactly.
And that was the initial kind of thought, was it?
That was the initial thought.
To try and do it for real.
Well, the idea was to do it for real, and then we were like, oh, these objects are going to have to be like 3 kilometers long.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay.
But sorry, go on.
Well, no. So then what we were like, well, how can we make it as real as possible? So we went through all of that process in previs, and we found the right heights And so we could basically tell our drone operator, go to 92 meters, wasn't 92 meters because they can't fly that high, but whatever it was, and a 14 degrees angle down or whatever. And literally showing up my lack of technical skill. 93 meter drone and a 14 angle down, whatever. And that would be our first angle. And then we could overlay in post. So it was sort of, it was as real. We were still going through that same process, even though the object wasn't painted.
Yeah, you know, I hear you. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, you started off with how would this work in physical reality?
Exactly.
What are the limitations of physical reality, and how can we implement that in C? Because the takeover was so perfect. I thought that's the thing that I obviously knew at the beginning would have been VFX, but then
it's all the same. So there is no takeover.
Right.
That's, and I think for me the whole thing was trying to keep it pure, trying to keep it. You know, when you get these sort of doing things for real ads or ideas, they become the idea is so much of you're doing this for real that it becomes very, very important. And if you don't do it for real, then anyone could have done it. And so you kind of go, right, we've got to do it for real, but you still got to do it well. You've still got to make it an amazing film experience.
Right. That leads us on beautifully. Oh, so do you have more to talk about this? All right, Karen.
Yeah. So I think what we were trying to do with the Lexus stuff was try and keep the process real. And we did that very well by, you know, working with the post house and, you know, prevising it. And then on the day we had the drone, the post guy was out there, and he was, you know, post-production supervisor was out there with barrels, marking out the shapes. Markers.
Oh, what was the actual shape of?
He basically marked out, that's the last point of that. That's you know, and so we had this sort of vague. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't, you know, he only had about 6 barrels, and it was really hot weather. So
was that like a kind of tracking marker thing?
Yeah. So it was to try and, you know, they were tracking markers to make sure we could get the graphic bedded into the ground, but it was also to make sure that the car had some idea of where it was going. And, you know, we had an idea of how far we had before we had to catch it up with the drone. And it was quite a mission, but it was one of those things of like, I love that. Like, well, how the fuck are we going to do this? This is a really
puzzle to solve.
The puzzle was like so. You know, I love that sort of thing of like, it's sort of right. We can really attack this. You know, the treatment for that one was. It was like there was hardly any reference in it. It was like, you know, a couple of pictures of nice, you know, bit of nice car.
It kind of hadn't been done before, right?
Well, so, but it's not just that. It was actually me. Like, I just basically spent 3 days taking pictures of objects and like then getting a video camera and then moving into it and going, oh, we could do it like that.
Yeah.
It was more about.
So you did it on a model scale first.
Yeah, I literally just printed stuff out on a desk and had my phone and filmed it. Yeah. And you kind of go, all right, okay, that'll work. And then it just comes into sort of car stuff. And you know, what was lovely is that that was in Utah on Bonneville Salt Flats. So you had this salt that was coming out. It looked a bit like snow. And the VFX supervisor was amazing. He was sort of colouring some of it. So you get, it had the intent, the spray felt like it had been painted on. It was really lovely. And because you see so many ads.
So how much of it was coloured how much of it was for actual real?
None.
Really?
Yeah.
Because when the car's driving around, that's all VFX.
That's all VFX.
Wow.
I mean, incredible.
Because I genuinely thought you dyed snow. That's what it looked like to me.
Well, I mean, that's amazing. You know, I don't think people look at it and go, oh, that, you know, so that's what I'm saying. There was no takeover. It was all CG, apart from the car. It was like, oh, I don't really know what takeover means.
Yeah.
People talk about it.
Yeah.
Sound clever.
Yeah. Didn't work for me.
I don't know. I assume it's when CG and film come together, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, I know what it means. I'm just checking you do. I'm just checking the audience knows. But it's that thing of it was. Can we put the heart one back up? Sorry. You know, so that is a drone shot. And that's a real car, and then we're coming lower, and trying to catch the car up. And you're like, fuck it, I'll go on, hurry up before we run out of heart. And then you've got all this stuff, all the sort of snow coming out the back, and he's basically managed to track the colours and add colour, track the dust and add colour to it. Yeah. So it just gives it an amazing feel.
Yeah. Well, it just feels totally immersive when you're on the ground. You believe, obviously at first it feels like it's a graphic, and then as it dips down, there's a moment you go about here when you go, oh, you know, and then by the time you land, or you get just above, by these shots here, it feels like it's completely dyed snow.
And I mean, you know, shooting cars on Bonneville Salt Flats is quite possibly the easiest job in the world. They just look phenomenal. We were like, you know, midday sun. We were out scouting it, and like we had a silver truck, and you just like, you look at recce pictures of this silver truck in this white landscape with this, you know, and just everything just wrapping. It looks like a studio lit truck. It's incredible. So as soon as you know, let the sun go down a little bit, you just get this incredible liquid metal, and you know, it's easy. I mean, obviously, it's very difficult.
Do you have a specific drone that can fly at a high speed for this?
It wasn't. It was FPV hadn't really got to the points it's at now. That was just a heavy lift drone with I think we did something cool with this one as well. We were with the cameras. We were shooting on Alexa because the LF hadn't quite come out, I think. But
this is before Alexa Mini, was it?
So this was the Alexa Mini.
Oh, yeah.
But what we did was we turned the camera sideways and rehoused the lens sideways. So we actually ended up shooting on like a 5:4 image or a 4:5 image. So you had this sort of big, because we needed 9:16, 1:1, and 16:9. And we were like, well, how are we going to do this without shooting everything 3 times? And so we actually shot we came up with this thing of turning the camera sideways, and so you ended up with the best
compromise.
Yeah, but it wasn't really what was amazing, because we managed, it was anamorphic. So, but the actual lenses, the anamorphic, you know, where it goes that slightly sort of edgy at the sides, that's actually at the top and bottom. So it's got a really weird look to it.
Right, interesting.
But it's great. It looks, you know, you still get that lens quality of the anamorphic.
Yeah.
But it was allowing us to get all the formats, and you know, in a really sort of satisfactory way, rather than just doing some like, oh well, one's going to suffer. Right. It was cool. Good fun.
Interesting. So it was shooting anamorphic squeeze. It would have been a 1.5 squeeze probably. For that.
Yeah, probably.
Rather than a 2, because
do you know what? Like the amount of times me and McGregor, the DP, like, and I talked about it, and he was like, "No, we do it like this," and I'm like, "So you're turning the camera and you're turning the lens." Yeah. You know, I couldn't work out whether you're turning the you know, you're not just turning everything on its side. I think you're turning the camera one way and the lens the other. Oh, right. So you get a weird shape. Yeah. Right. But it's fucking cool.
But it worked. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. And like really clever. We're really smart. Yeah.
What period of your career was this?
This was post Grand Tour, I think. So I'd done some Grand Tour. I'd done Top Gear and done some Grand Tour. Maybe it was in between. I can't remember. Some years. I mean, not that long ago, but not.
So going back to the other Lexus ads, the battery and the other version. Should we just play the others through as well? Was it just a different car trajectory with each one?
Each one was different, and each one had a different map. Each one had and it was sort of arbitrary how we did it in the previs of like, oh, let's stick the drone at this height, or let's, you know, and it just what worked out as a shape and what worked out as a path of the car and which area we want to be on, and you know, how do we get the light to look the best, and you know, they weren't, you know, the process was the same, and we were just like, let's make them different. And there wasn't any reasoning to go, oh, well, we're going to do this one like this. It was just we'll do it like that because we did. It was sort of a kind of one of those decisions where there doesn't need to be a reason for it. You know, you could probably sort of retroactively put one in, but I don't know if it's necessary.
Yeah. Cool. So let's go on to Ali Bank, because you said something earlier. Do you want to pull it out about real events?
Yes.
Yeah, and doing something for real.
Yeah.
Because this conversation about what's VFX and what's real.
Yeah.
This was all shot for real, right?
All for real, no VFX.
Right. Because when I first saw it, I thought there must be some VFX. There must be some model. Did he actually do this for real?
We built a giant bucket in the desert.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Because most directors probably wouldn't even think that's possible, right?
I've done a lot of stupid shit.
Yeah.
I think what was amazing was when I was talking to the agency on that first call. That it's Anomaly. They're amazing New York agency and like super creative, super cool. Like obviously, really like they're just really enthusiastic and love what they're doing, and just sort of taking them through some work and go, oh well. Yeah, I dropped that from a crane.
So you've got the Ford stuff as well.
So I've got Ford, I've
Tic
got Tic Tac,
yeah.
I've got Grand Tour. We played battleships with cars.
Right.
Chris Hemsworth, I hung him from a rope. So there's.
Out of any director in the world, you probably have the most hanging things from
of dropping shit and blowing shit up and hanging things from cranes.
Yeah.
It was kind of like I felt quite sorry for the other directors on the pitch because it's just here's the real. Yeah. It's like that time when you lose something and you look at someone's reel and go, yeah, fair play.
Yeah.
Which I try and do a lot, where you go. You look at your competitors and they win and you're like, brilliant, fair play.
Tip your hat to them.
Yeah, exactly. But you sort of like, I think I would have been absolutely mortified and gutted and in a depression for years if I didn't win it. I was like, what more can I do? It's like, have you got a woman in a red dress? And you're like, well, have you got a car hanging from it? Yes, I have. Have you got something? Yes, I have. It's sort of.
Why do you say that?
Yeah. And it's funny, I mean, we can come back to this, but it's like losing jobs is something that is. It hurts every time, right? Because you're sort of you emotionally invest.
Well, particularly directors have to do the whole treatment process without even getting a penny, right?
Yeah.
So it's not only
we're trying to change that,
getting rejected, but it's not getting paid for your work, which I've always thought was very unfair.
Yeah, I mean, it's a the pitch process is difficult, and I think you've got to. I spent a lot of my earlier years very much believing. When I'm not winning a job, they're personally rejecting me. It was a real massive issue. It was sort of it starts to really get into your soul that you're like, why am I not winning? Do they hate me? Do they hate me as a human? Am I a bad, and it's that separation of work and self so important.
This
to
is
learn.
A really, really good point you're making here, I think, particularly for young filmmakers coming up now.
Yeah,
it's that identity. The thing is, your identity does fall into your role as a
100%. Yeah, and
how do you protect that from
I mean, and I love the fact my identity is I am a film director and that is me, and I am that is so much part of who I am because I spend so much time practicing and doing and becoming, and it's like a real big thing, but having that notion that when you're losing a job, that's a personal attack on you or a personal critique of you. That can lead to some heavy, dark days.
Yeah. Do you have a process for dealing with that now? Is there a thought process?
I do. I actually, quite recently, I found out about a guy. I think his name's Todd Herman, and he's a sports psychologist, and he I heard it on a podcast, a Psychology Now podcast or whatever, and it's called The Alter Ego Effect. And what he does is he says you've got to separate when you can turn on an ego, you can turn on an alter ego to go into a room and be that person. He did this thing with this high level tennis player, and she was really amazing. She had smashed the first set and beat them 6-1, and then in the second set would let the competitor come back in. And it turned out that her in her real life, she's a very fair human. So when she was like, I can't be beating them this much. It's not fair.
Right.
So he worked with her and really quickly went, well, we're going to take that fairness out of your on-court persona.
Yeah.
And, you know, so, I mean, I'm very good at like sort of I'm not really into the self-help shit, but I'm like, that really helped because it allowed me to go, well, that's, you know, my professional career and that's me, and they are not the same. There is crossover, and you know, I'm not you know, but I also think having, you know, just I don't know how else I deal with it, but I think it's that thing of just having the confidence to know that you're doing okay. And I think it's very difficult in our industry where, you know, when you're doing great, everyone tells you you're doing great, but when you're not doing so great and you're losing some pictures on the bounce and you're feeling shit, it can get really hard. And you've got to keep strong because it is hard. It is just hard. Our job, you know, we get to do something that many people want to do, and we get to do it. And
the competition gets stronger and stronger, and it doesn't. You think at the beginning of your career that you're going to get to a certain plateau and it's all going to be all right. And it's always going to be a struggle. Wherever you are in your career, there's always going to be competition, and you're always going to be struggling with stuff.
A very dear friend of mine knows some really like massive DPs, like some really like, you know, the Darius Condrys and that sort of human. And she was at lunch in LA with a bunch of these DOPs, and they're all freaking out because Steven Spielberg hasn't called him back or this, and you're just like, fucking hell, it never stops.
The human emotions never change.
It's like
we're broken children. All of us.
You get to that level and it's still not like, oh my God, oh, he's never going to work with me again. And you're like, fucking hell, what? You mean it never gets easy? I think I'm now in a position, you know, last year I had a really bad year. I lost a couple of ads that I should have won, like, or you know, could have won because of my real, you know, it was like, and I lost them, and they were sort of, you know, not life changing, but they would have, like, you know, paid for a chunk of a year, and you kind of like, okay, that's great, that would have been, you know, and I lost them, and then a TV show I was on sort of changed tack, and I left it because it wasn't right, and then, you know, and suddenly I'm sitting there and I haven't worked for a few months, and I'm like, fuck, you know, it was a dark year. And then suddenly it changes again, and I'm off doing Clarkson's Farm and doing a couple of ads and this and that and the other, and it's
do you find
a tricky
that
one.
Do you find that when, 'cause me personally, it's taken me a long time to kind of figure this out, but I find that in life I'm either enjoying things and feeling kind of in a comfortable space, or I'm learning stuff and in an uncomfortable space, and the learning stuff, when I look back on it, there's that famous kind of Buddhist saying of when people congratulate you on something, you go, let's see. And when people commiserate with you, you go, let's see. Because the bigger, grander scheme of things hasn't revealed itself to you yet. So when you're going through difficult times in life, it's setting you up for something in the future, perhaps. Do you see what I mean? So it's like I'm learning stuff that is forcing me, like this whole Setnotes thing, for example. This never would have come about had I not been panicking about my career and trying to stay relevant, right? So in a way, that kind of darkness has led to something for me that's very positive.
I mean, growth is hard, right? I mean, everyone says that, and you kind of, yes, but and I think if you've got the attitude of I'm going to learn something out of this hardship, then yes, absolutely. You know, or suddenly, but you know, sometimes you can just be like, oh my God, and you just want to lock yourself in a dark room and cry. You know, you're kind of like, oh my God, you know, I'm not there anymore. I've never, you know, I haven't been there. You know, throughout your career, you sort of, you invest emotionally in something, you work really hard on it, and then you lose it, and then you sort of have to go through a period of mourning of like, oh, I didn't win that.
That's really valuable. What you just said, and I think it is a process of mourning, and it is like the loss of something, isn't it? And that is a process that has a time span, and you go through that, and then you come out the other end and you're good to move on again, right? So
you sort of come out and you're like, okay, I've had my 3-4 days of moping about, and now it's time to get back on the fucking horse and go again. You know, and so much of what we do is about that grit and determination, tenacity, and just fucking no one's going to stop me from doing this. And that is so much of what we do, you know, and I think that takes, it's more than talent, more than networking, more than anything. It's that grit and determination is sort of that, you know, it it's hard, and and I know it's sort of, it's hard for everyone, and maybe some harder for some more than others in terms of race, gender, color, whatever. It's sort of, but actually, I think it's just fucking hard.
Yeah.
And you've just got to really push, and no one's, that's the only way through it.
And we touched on this before we started rolling, but it's also the non-transferable skill problem that we've burnt our ships, haven't we? So what else?
It's the only way.
So we have to keep driving forward, otherwise
absolutely.
we are fucked. So
I think, I mean, I reckon I could probably, be the captain of a ship. Because it's about it's leadership, right? I mean, that's the only thing but I'm not actually qualified for it because I've never done an MBA. But maybe I could do an MBA.
Do you fantasize about that ever? Do you have nightmares or dreams or whatever about the manning? Being a captain.
No, I never dream about being a captain. I don't like that. All that going up and down. Oh, fuck that. No. I think I do sort of fantasize sometimes. I go, I reckon I'd be quite good at running a company. Like I can manage people, but I don't. I think the COVID thing really brought it home. Where you're like, well, what if it all never goes back to normal? What do we do? I haven't got any transferable skills, and I've got daughters now, and like one of them's 15 and sort of wants, looking at A levels and wants to do art. No, photography, drama, and politics. And you go, okay, that's a great spread. What a brilliant, setting you up for life in terms of being able to talk to people, have an appreciation of drama, photography, great, and politics, brilliant, right? Okay, happy, great. But she wants to either be an actor or a director or a something to this ridiculous industry.
What does she think of your job and what you do?
I think she loves it. I think
she's been on set with you.
Yeah. I take her on set, and and it was great. I took her on set down Clarkson's farm, and what was so lovely is sort of seeing her confidence of like being, asking people about stuff and being engaged and working hard and sort of being a human, and you're going, oh wow. But I think what I'd have to do, what I want her to do is be able to go, right, well, you need some sort of passive, some sort of passive income, like, whether it's just like we've got to set up some investments or something that, through the hard times when, because it is like this thing of like, sometimes you're super busy and sometimes you're just dead. And, to have at least some money coming in.
It's a hedge, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in a way, that's what we, again, going back to the Setnotes thing, the guys we work with, I said, look, this is the perfect hedge because when it's quiet, everyone's around to come on Setnotes.
Exactly.
If we can build this up and just have a little bit of income so we can just about survive on it, then, we got the perfect hedge against the film industry. It's like having a balanced portfolio almost, isn't it? That kind of 100%. Feeling. Yeah. Do you think she'll be a runner, first off? You were running, weren't you?
I was a runner. I didn't go to film school.
By the way, I love the fact that I heard you on the podcast saying that when I was a runner, I literally turned up with running running attire, tracksuit, and I was like, "Damn it, that's what we should get all the right."
Second
week. More than lazy runners that don't run.
I mean, I turned quite quickly into a lazy runner. Not lazy. I was never lazy. I always had, I was always, I always felt I was a good runner. But I would, if she wants to go into this industry. If she wants to go to film school, great. If she doesn't, whatever. I'm not going to force her down my route. I don't know whether my route made my life harder, but gave me a better education. Weird. It's sort of like a weird...
And the route of non-film school.
Yeah, because I think you can come out of film school having, you can get an agent.
Do you really think film schools are what they're cracked up to be nowadays? I just think there's so much on YouTube you can learn now.
I've always felt that people get more out of being a runner. You meet people, you learn about the politics of set, you learn about what a gaffer does, you learn what a grip does, you help lay a track, you understand everyone's job. And you get to meet people and you get to make shit and go, oh, I'm gonna, you're working on a, amazing thing or a shit thing, whatever it is, but there's budget behind it and you see how it's done properly and then you can basically, but I met that second AC, I'm going to get them to light something for me, or and like.
So you're getting into the network. Of being into the real
that's
industry.
That's what I did. That my very first short film, I got as a focus puller called Max Glickman. I don't know if he's still focus pulling. I think he might actually.
Is this the film that we have to show?
You do, but I don't know whether I haven't actually sent it to you.
Okay. But we can insert it later, right? Yeah.
It's called Just Because, and it was like just a black and white thing of a guy tap dancing around Brixton. I'd found a song I liked, and it's it's basically a tap dancing music video, but it's kind of Max and I were running together. I knew he wanted to go camera, and he was a great photographer, and it was like, right, let's make something. And we found some film, found cameras, and got a production company to help us with the insurance, and went off and did it. And that was what we did. And that was the way you did it.
Back then, was your role the director, and you knew that was the direction you were going to go in, or were you more just I'm a filmmaker and not so? I think I've gone, I always wanted to be a director. Well, I first started wanting to be a stuntman, actually. And then I realised that you didn't. Do they get hurt?
Yeah, they get hurt a lot. And being a director, you can still do the stunts and have a cool fun, play with all the toys, but you don't actually have to do the hard bit. Which is fine. But, and I think growing up, when I was, it was weird. So I started as a runner, and I was sort of directing bits and short films and, funny little internet films.
And this is in the period before YouTube, right? This is when it's
just
kind of,
before YouTube.
That language was just getting formed at the time.
And and you couldn't really move the camera because the internet, the bandwidth would just go, with the screen, nothing would work. You couldn't download anything. I first did stuff. We were doing interactive films, and we had to burn them to DVD-ROMs because the internet, the bandwidth just wasn't there. And I was presenting them to creative directors, going, "Look, you can move the mouse to make the camera move," and they were going, "What's a mouse?" And you're like, "For fuck's sake, how am I meant to be like?" Oh my god, we'd done some really cool stuff. We'd sort of like made slices of a stills camera and turn that into a interactive thing, and then you could do a takeover where the camera would move from the same frame, and it was kind of like a POV interactive thing, and it was like. And that was really cool, but it was like I was talking to people who didn't know, who would. One creative director I know used to get his PA to print emails out for him. He would then dictate back what he wanted to say, and then she would have to type them up. And it was just like, you're printing emails out. Right. What the fuck?
Yeah. That is the fear of technology, isn't it? My God.
Well,
yeah.
I don't know. I think it's anyway.
Being a comfort in the way things are done.
Yeah. Yeah. It's bizarre.
So you saw it quite early on then, where it was going. Do you think you had a sense of where sort of internet culture was going?
Yeah, I think so. I think I was very lucky. I think that music videos. I was never very good at. I think. To do music videos well, I think you have to be a musician of some sort. Not like you don't have to be in a. I think all the best music video directors I know, like they just, they play an instrument.
That has a musical sense of kind of it's the rhythm of the
I think so.
Edison,
I don't know. Maybe I'm sort of slating some amazing music video directors that don't. But for me, I was never very good at the music video game. I couldn't quite work it out. I didn't really understand it. But internet films, viral little films were starting to happen. And they were, a client would give us 15 grand to make something stupid. And, we would do it, and then we would seed it on like LimeWire or whether those sites where, the peer-to-peer Napster and all that stuff where, we'd sort of seed it with like its real name, but then we'd like put like pornographic names on it to try and get people to download it. So you're just like girl with big titty or whatever, Like,
so that's what's it called, a clickbait
title? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We were doing that, and I don't know how successful our films were getting out there, but it was fun.
A lot of very disappointing teenagers in their rooms.
Yeah, just like, what's this? But I think I've always been very much techno joy. I love, technology and, sort of like where, and I thought, the internet I was a very early adopter, and I loved it, and I really I love and understand computers. So I kind of like, seeing the internet as this sort of, free publishing tool was amazing, and going, well, none of us really knew where it was going, but we were kind of like really into it in terms of like you could do weird shit and put it out there, and people go, oh, that's amazing. And I think that's what I love about going back to Ally Bank, that bucket thing.
Let's get it back up, actually. Yeah.
It sort of, when I saw the script and I was talking to the creators, and I was going, it's got the sense of those early virals, which are they're just a bit moronic. They're just a bit silly. They're joyous. They're silly. They're fun. They've got a sense of, it is just like, let's do this because it's a bit stupid, but it's fun.
So how did the idea come to you initially then? Was
this idea?
Yeah.
So this came through as a script, but it was literally like 7 boards on a piece of paper with like a voiceover on it. And I was on my way to a location scout in the mountains, and I took the first call on it at about 7 a.m. at a gas station in San Bernardino in LA, so it was quite a weird sort of like, but that's the other thing. Everyone loves to work with busy people, right? So it was kind of like that thing of like, I've taken time out of my scout, and I think there's something so much I've learned about the politics of our industry, of like, like I was busy, I was on this set, and I had this amazing call with the creatives, and we were just sort of talking about it, and I go, well, we've got to do it for real. We've got to make it, because otherwise it's just, if you don't do it for real, it doesn't mean anything. And it's sort of this sense of, I mean, it's weird because actually the light was so good where we shot this in Argentina that actually it doesn't actually look that real. Yeah,
that's what I was going to say. It's too perfect in a way, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit,
and that's why the BTS would have been so valuable to have.
We've got a BTS. Yeah, have you seen it?
Yes, that's because I first thought when I saw this, it might have been models or something. Yeah, there might be some key effects.
But it was like, there was no painter in the original script. I was going, we've got to show some human element in it. Otherwise, you're never going to know that this is real. And you could still do that with, you could probably, do it in Unreal now. Weirdly, we did actually use Unreal. The set designer, production designer built Juan. He's amazing. He's so cool. If you sort of Google a picture of production designer, you get a picture, him. He's like smoked cigarettes, like sort of like he's this cool. He's so cool. He's so lovely. Such a lovely man, but cares.
What's his full name?
Juan Castillo, and he's in Argentina, Buenos Aires. So, so he built the whole thing in Unreal, and then so I've never used Unreal, and I was like, well, fuck it, I downloaded a copy of it, and I had to rent a new computer because mine's so old. I'm just like, oh Christ. But what was amazing is I set up the cameras we were using, with the chip and the chip size and the lenses and everything, and then I could just fly the camera around and go, oh well, let's do if we do a tracking shot. So let's do a tracking shot from there to there. If we're on a anamorphic aspect ratio, then we're going to have to, we're going to need about a 50-foot track. How are we going to do? Okay, right. It was really super useful. Unreal was it was suddenly like this incredible thing, because I could go, all right, we've got quite an abstract thing. We're not just doing, 2 people in a kitchen having a chat. It's a giant bucket. I've no idea what the aspect ratio is how that's going to work. And I want to shoot it anamorphic, and I want it to be cinematic, and I want it to sort of feel, big and scale and epic and just have that sort of gravitas. But it was like, well, how's this going to work? So actually having, being able to link up my PlayStation controller to my laptop and fly the camera about, and then, even managing at one point to put in some like, what they called, keyframes to go, right, well, this will be the track. And then, but one thing I couldn't do very easily was work out how long the track was going to have to be, because I couldn't quite get, I think you need a PC and a 3-button mouse to actually be able to sort of like do lots of sort of measuring stuff, but you could do it. But weirdly, these are stuff I did beforehand in previous, and they look very similar to the real thing.
And going back to the move,
Yeah.
so I'm trying to remember, was it? It's a track out? Is it?
Yeah, so Technocrane coming out,
Right.
and so on the telescope, and then back on the track as well.
And was there any thought of ever doing that on drone, or because you wouldn't get the floaty bit? At
We
the front,
did.
would you?
We thought about doing it on a drone, and then we just in talking to. We go, oh, we want a heavy lift drone, and we want, put a Lexus 35 on it. And the drone company was saying, look, it's high altitude. It's, the lens package you can have is going to be, the camera lens package is going to be really light. You're going to really struggle with the altitude and the wind and this, that, the other. So actually, we were like, right, okay, let's do it on a Techno and sort of have that, But then, weirdly, there wasn't quite enough track, so we were like, okay, well, we're going to have to use it. There's a bit of post zoom up the front coming out to a sort of the telescope coming out to the track, so it's sort of quite a weird. It's sort of like got a little bit of everything, but it was just trying to get that first scene to sort of feel as epic as and real as possible, and be able to start on a bit of the close up of the brush and then come all the way back out.
This is behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is, because you can see.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm a bit annoyed because at the beginning you can see right at the rim of the bucket. It's a bit knackered where the paint had flaked off. And I kind of wish they'd kept that.
Yeah, kept
like
that.
Yeah, it's like they cleaned it up a bit too much, and it's like, but it's cool. We.
So steel frame and then clad with
these sort of
plywood or
MDF
whatever.
boxes, box panels, and the construction manager was that woman there. She's incredible. That was us trying to work out where to put a camera if we were putting it in the box, in the party supplies, of how a shot might work. Quite a lot of this stuff is you set it up with best guess intentions, and then you just have to pull the string and let it go. And the skill is not in the moment of filming. The skill is in the setting it up. It's a slightly different process to doing like a car shot.
Can you loop that again, please?
So when you're doing this stuff for real, like the Tic Tac or this or Non-Stop Fernando, the skill is in the setup and the planning of, this is what we're trying to achieve. Where do we best put angles? Where it's one moment. How are we gonna? You don't want to cover the same moment from 5 angles. You want to cover that progression of narrative from the 5 angles, but you want to be able to choose where they're from. So it's a little bit. It's like it's
thinking
a
it's a live event kind of documentary kind of journalistic instincts kick in.
Exactly, and but then you also get the. What happens quite a lot is when people go, oh, we're doing an event, we want you to make a film at the same time. And you go, well, that's not going to work, because if you're making a film like this, you can film a live event, but you can't make a film and do a live event. But you can make, so it's a bit of a nuanced thing, and it's sort of, but I always get, you get these scripts through and you're just like, oh, this is never going to work, because you essentially... they're trying to do an activation or whatever where we've got public and lots of people handing shit out, and you go, and we want you to make a film about it, and you're like, well, no, I can follow it and make an observational doc about it, but it'll be a bit but it to be able to do something for real.
It's a really important distinction, an observational doc or a refined film.
Where you can make a refined film about a real thing that has a one shot thing, but it's a very different process.
Because you're always going to be fighting for the camera positions or whatever.
100%.
So going back to keep playing that game, please, Jared. The interior shots when the car's dropping in. Was that's done for real as well?
So the bucket was made. It was clad. So it's a steel structure, and then this sort of box frame, box MDF things going up. And then the inside was painted and the outside was painted, and then the logo put on. The inside was a bit, was not as highly finished, so you can see sort of the paneling a bit more. But, I always wanted to have cameras inside the bucket, at the start of the process, it was like, oh, we want to see the carnage of these things breaking, and it's like we sort of discussed that, and the client got a bit nervous, going, I don't want to be sort of showing willful destruction of things, and it was also like, these are things people are saving for. You don't want to see them be destroyed. It sort of goes against the sort of the philosophy. So it was more about, okay, we'll just make it more about the purity of the fall and the fun of it. Which I think, was a correct decision in the end. And it was, it's always nice to see something break.
With the car, do you have the innards taken out to make it lighter?
There was no engine in it, but everything else was in there. And, so the seats were in there, the steering wheel, the dashboard, all that. And we just, mounted some cameras in there.
In the actual car, yeah.
Yeah, in the car, but on the back seat, so you've got a bit of foreground, you've got the seats foreground, and then the dash, and then through the windscreen, and then you get that thing of the ground rush effect, and it just gives you a bit more. It was something I learned actually on a Grand Tour film when we were filming at a racetrack, and we didn't have a proper tracking vehicle. Weirdly, we just sort of, it was just one of those things where we managed to mount a camera on a car, and we did a joust where we had two cars drifting around a corner and the tracking car opposing them. And the best shot it's a killer shot from just like through the main camera, but actually the best shot is from someone shooting from the back seat, as you see the driver, the seats, the dash, and then these two cars just go boom, boom, like that, and it's just like it's unreal. Actually, I think it's in my stunt reel where actually I use that shot more than I use the actual shot from the main camera. It was really interesting learning.
It
was cool.
Just a revelation to have, isn't it?
Yeah.
So interior cameras can work better than the big kind of Russian arm jousting.
Yeah, and I think cameras is something that's so important. I grew up, we were using shit mini DV cameras, which were the first broadcast handy cam cameras, and Louis Theroux was sort of doing really amazing documentaries on them because he was like the access. He didn't need a crew, he needed an operator and a sound human, and now and then came a 5D, which was suddenly changed the world in terms of it was the end of shit video. You could put a decent film lens, on the mini DV stuff. I think you talked to Ian Pons-Jewell about it, where we were all trying to put film lenses onto these mini, had spinning discs.
The PS Technique.
Exactly.
And,
and actually one of my films I shot on that, and it was like, it's great. It's kind of, it did make the image better. But then suddenly the 5D comes out, and it's like, oh my God, you can actually, obviously we're all obsessed with that sort of, shallow depth of field thing.
Full frame effect,
but it was that full frame, and I did some Royal Marine stuff on it where we had it on a snorri cam, and suddenly you're getting proper photographic portraiture out of a video camera that's the size of a SLR, and it's like
it really
incredible.
Did change cinematography, and the fact that it was an afterthought for Canon, they just were making a stills camera fundamentally,
and
just had this sort of, it's got a video function, whatever. And then suddenly the whole world was changed by it.
It's amazing. It was amazing. And I think, the amount of arguments I've had with DOPs, who are mates of mine, about, sort of cameras, actually, if you're making a film, if you want to go out and make a film, the last thing you worry about is what you're shooting it on. It's the story, the dialogue, the actors. People don't walk out of films because
that's a great camera body.
Oh my God, the camera,
the carbon fiber on that camera body.
Or even oh wow, the cinematography was so amazing. You're gonna go, sure, great, but without substance.
Famously says that if someone sees the cinematography, that's a loss for him because they should be watching the film, right? So.
He
can get away with that.
Yeah, exactly. He also says something like, people confuse cinematography with locations, and you're like, well, yeah. That's sort of true as well, where you kind of go, you're in an incredible location, and I'm quite surprised. I looked at your reel. I'm quite surprised there's no smoke in here. I was like, it's quite like. I was like, where's the cracked oil?
I know. I got a little bit obsessed with that.
That's great. It looks fucking amazing. But the 5D was so important for that, and then suddenly it's and then comes all the sort of the, when was it Michael Mann shot the first thing on HD, and it was like, and it was a nightmare, and it was like this sort of like, had 50 cables that came out of the camera.
Public Enemy or something? Was it Public Enemies maybe?
Well, no, it was a commercial. He shot a commercial
right,
on it. I mean, didn't he shoot the Mercedes Lucky Star or something on
This was the early days of...
this was literally before, this was like when,
when Panavision were messing around with like big umbilical cords.
Yeah, exactly. It was nuts. And now, and then suddenly, I'm going onto the Grand Tour and Amazon going, oh, we want 4K. And you're going, okay, how are we going to do that? Crossing a continent with 4K, it's like, the technology has moved so quick and it's amazing. And like...
So your career's kind of run alongside the developments in the technology, really.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I mean, I feel it's such an exciting time to be a filmmaker because there's no excuse anymore. The phone and everyone is a filmmaker now. And I think we were talking about this earlier where, before we start recording, where craft is, hold on, where we're talking about it, where, you look at sort of the young people out there who are going out and just making stuff and they don't have the same discipline as, setting the lens boxes out in a certain way and having that there and, how traditionally sort of camera crews have been trained. The people come through now, the content creators, they don't have a fucking clue about any of that.
Yeah, which is a weakness and a strength.
100%. I mean, it's sort of, I think we can all learn from each other.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
I have quite, kind of strong point to make on that, actually, is that I find a healthier set is an intergenerational set. I think you need the elders as a village, right? So for the village to function well, you need the elders of the village, but then you need the next generation. You need a relevance of the next generation as well, and you need that enthusiasm and that kind of that fresh look at something, right? So, but I think the combination of the two works really well. And the danger we got with the videography kind of like culture we have at the moment is, firstly, they look at traditional filmmaking and it's a bit of a glass ceiling for them because they're used to running off on their own with their camera and doing a videography one-man band type scenario.
100%.
And then when they get to a proper film set and they realise that it's all divided up into specialisms, and they're like, well, I'm just a filmmaker, right? I do a bit of editing, bit of directing, bit of DOPing. To progress, you have to almost specialise in one thing to engage in that next level of filmmaking. And the other thing is the craft associated with all of that, and how it's a deeper craft at that level. Do you know what I mean? And that step up is actually quite a big step up, and for them culturally, and also just set etiquette, understanding how a set functions. It's so, and you have these whole videographers. They make these beautiful Instagram accounts, and they got really great work, but they they're expendable almost to clients. They get used, and they get kind of pushed to one side because there's such a kind of
there's a churn of them,
coming through. But
I guess also like have any of them ever moved from that sort of high beautiful content creation into the world that we sort of are living in that sort of that cinema, advertising, TV world where it is different, but it's fundamentally the same. It's about capturing amazing shit in great light, right? I mean, you kind of have there been people who've crossed over? And I don't know if they have yet. I mean, I just don't know. And I don't know how much money you can make as a content creator. You see these breakdowns of like, if you're doing a single celebrity, studio interview thing, this is what you should pay yourself. This is what, they break down a budget, and you're kind of going, well, yeah, fine. If you can do, 100 of those a year, but how you just...
Yeah, so there's a bit of exploitation with that, I think. And it is a bit of a race to the bottom, and that's the problem. Whereas, before with the technology, it didn't really allow that. So people, if you want to get a film made, it will cost you X amount, and then that's that. And nowadays you have all these kind of like different levels of, and some of them, you get the right light, you guys, and the right conditions, and suddenly you end up with something really stunning. And the client looks at that and goes, well, okay, so that's cost me like 10% of what it would have done, and they expect that next time. Do you know what I mean? And I think it is a problem. But going back to the intergenerational thing, these young filmmakers, they grow up with their generation, and it's like my advice to a young director is work with an old DOP, and my advice to a young DOP is work with an old gaffer.
Right.
Honestly, it will change the way you do things. Because they got all of that wealth of experience. If you can find old people that are still enthusiastic, that's that's a sort of the secret sauce, I think.
100%. And there's I'm gonna clang on the floor, but Darren Aronofsky was exec producer on Limitless, and chatting to him and Eric Watson, who produced Requiem and Pi, and I can't remember, and maybe some others. We'll check on IMDb, but him and Darren have known each other for years, and they were saying the beginning of Pi or Requiem, they would get everyone to get they have these amazing gaffers or these grips who've super experienced people. And they would say, this is what we're trying to achieve. We've got the vision to do it, but we don't necessarily know what we do. And if you've got an idea of how to do it better, or you've got some creative input, we want to know. And I think having that openness as a director or a producer or as a filmmaker, just to to sort of have the wealth of experience of these incredibly talented people is incredible. I mean, it's really funny. I was looking at getting some work done on my house, and I would sort of have lots of neighbours. Oh, you should try this architect. So you go, oh, okay, great. Get the architect over, and they come up with these our big thing is these lights, and you're like, okay, where are your ideas? And you're like, I think what you forget when we work in this industry, you work with such incredible talents, like these people these set designers that are incredible, these DOPs that are just masters, there's this gaffers, grips, whatever, they're so clever at what they do. And then you meet, suddenly you're just going, right, okay, you're surrounded by such amazing,
such high level of craft. And it's almost like when you get into commercials, it is almost perfect craft, I think. And that's the big difference. You see, when I was speaking to Ian, you could see the work previous to getting taken up by, a company and given the best crew. And you could see the transition between the sort of low budget music video into the first commercial work, and then the perfect craft was the perfect craft. And that's when the voice is really kind of refined, and and it's all done to the highest of levels.
I think it's we do get to work with some incredible people, and that is it's a privilege, and and that's the job, isn't it? It's about getting the best out of people by by inspiring them to do something cool, and that's great.
Let's should we get into a bit of car stuff?
Sure.
So Toyota Supra.
The pitch.
We got a bunch of BTS around us. The pitch. We got because you showed me some stuff.
So this is this was fun, right? So this was direct to client, weirdly. The Toyota client in America and this company called Sweatpants had done the Challenge Vietnam film, which we haven't talked about, which was basically 3 trucks going across Vietnam and like a road trip.
Do you want to get that up first? Would that help?
Sure. Let's talk about that first. So this was I was on holiday, and I got an email from this random company in America going, oh, we want to do a big film driving across Vietnam in 3 Toyota trucks. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Sure, great. Let's have a meeting. And thinking nothing will ever happen with that. And lo and behold, there's this amazing Toyota client called Paul Kaplitsky, and he's been a Toyota client for years and years and years, and he is just a genius at marketing. He really understands it, and he always loved Top Gear, and he wanted to do like a Top Gear Grand Tour type film of 3 trucks going across, a journey. And we flew 3 trucks to Vietnam and got these 3 guys. Andy Bell, who's the exec producer, is the guy, and you did a load of jackass and stuff. He's sort of stunty type human. And then Jamie Beswick and Ryan, and they're just sort of Toyota sort of sponsored humans. And we got these Toyota trucks and went to Vietnam and did like a 10-day road trip through Vietnam. So it was like a commercial, but a sort of a sort of bit of content, bit of TV at the same time. And it was very much drawing on my TV world and my commercials world, because you've got brand, your sort of guardianship and creating story and content of TV, so it's exciting to watch. Otherwise, what's the fucking point? You're kind of like just, and it was a lot of fun, and it really formed a relationship with Paul and Sweatpants, and that's Andy there, and just had this sort of real sense of doing interesting stuff that was sort of below the advertising line, as it were, but somewhat it was sort of, but more than content. So working with them, I then did a couple of other little bits and pieces for them and just sort of stayed in touch. And then Paul came to me and Andy and he said, I've got a couple of cars that have been on a movie. I think it was on one of the Fast and Furious movies. I need to get rid of them. I need to crush them. But I could find some money down the back of Toyota's sofa. Can we do something cool with it? And we're like, okay. So
this is,
and then we're moving on to the pitch now. Yeah. So this was, the
so that set up the
Challenge
relationship
Vietnam.
with Toyota.
Yeah. So Challenge Vietnam was, direct to Toyota. Saatchi's were involved. Saatchi's LA were involved, but it was quite a weird. It was very much led by the client and sort of like given, Saatchi's were very much involved, but it was sort of a slightly weird thing. And then after that, I got to know Paul quite well, and so he comes to me and Andy and goes, well, what can we do? So we sit down and we brainstorm and we kind of go, right, well, we can't do like a robbery. We can't do, chase scenes. We can't do anything. There's so many things you can't do because Toyota have to, they can't be seen to be, doing guns or sex or violence or whatever. You can't have
no vice kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And you kind of go, all right, that's, so it's funny that limitation makes you come up with some interesting stuff. So then we finally came up with this thing of having these Toyota. We came up with the pitch, and it's the GR division, the Gazoo Racing division, which is sort of the racing, sort of the AMG, the M4, the M Sports division of Toyota, and they make the hopped up cool cars, and we have the sort of the young representatives of that pitching to their bosses who just don't get it, and it's it's quite a sort of normal concept where I've seen it a couple of times where you kind of go, you've got the creatives pitching to the marketers or the the director pitching to the agency. People don't get it, but what it allowed us to do was do all the things we wanted to do, but then be told we can't do it. So I wrote the script of like, and just trying to put in gags of like, what if we do a burnout? Yeah, great. Okay, we'll do a burnout. But you can't lose traction on the wheels. It's like, well, a burnout is all about losing traction because it's about the wheels spinning. Yeah. Or you can't, we need some corners in there. And so we, putting massive drifts in. So we just managed to shoot this. It was, for what we did for a 5.5 minute video, it was about $1 million, and but that was including everything, and post and sound and everything. And it was like shot in downtown LA, and then shot a day of dialogue, comedy dialogue, and it's just trying to. It's a really silly film, but it looks super sexy. Looks like a movie shot on anamorphic, and then we shot on spherical for the interior scenes for the these, just to give it that point of difference. Working with McGregor DOP, who shot Lexus for me, and he's like, the hottest car DPs in the world. He's so good.
What's his full name?
Miguel something. He just goes as McGregor. And he's
where's he based?
He's based in LA. He's originally from Madrid, but he's lived in LA, I don't know, I think 20 years. And he's just, he's the best car DPs are generally so into their cars. They're like, he races. There's another guy, Gary Shaw, who is now doing a lot more sort of drama TV and really good. He shot Moon for Duncan Jones.
Right, yeah.
So Gary's
Great
amazing,
movie.
but he's also, he was a massive car DP, and he used to race them, and the best car DPs I know are really like into cars in terms of driving and racing and sort of, they know their cars.
Yeah. So live, breathe cars.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
Yeah.
And, it's weird. Like I've always loved cars, and working on Top Gear and Grand Tour, I don't have that nerd level sort of knowledge of, like some of the guys I'd work with on Top Gear, your Grand Tour, you'd see a Skoda drive past and they go, oh right, yeah, that's the 2 litre. They've also got one in a 1.8, and you're like, fucking hell, man. Yeah, I can understand that about a Ferrari, but a Skoda, you know that much about that? There's like deep nerdery, and like I just love making cars look cool and drive fast, and like I've got obviously being around all those guys for that long, I've got a far more deeper knowledge than I used to have, but actually my job is not to know that much. But interestingly, when I'm pitching on a car job or I'm working on a car job, I can talk about a car in a different way to a lot of directors, I think, because I have that journalistic level of how I approach it, of just the knowledge of what the cars are and how they drive. And I've probably driven them because I get to drive lots of different cars because I still have weird connections. And so when I'm talking to a client or talking to an agency, I think the agency are they're a bit bemused, and actually they just want a fashion director to go and shoot a car job and make it look cool. The car clients, I really like working with car clients because actually they're generally enthusiasts. Whereas, if you're doing a Fairy Liquid ad or a detergent ad or whatever, not many people, I'm sure there are some, but not many people grow up wanting to live, breathe, work in detergent, and end up working as the marketing people at a detergent company. But car clients generally, they grow up with a love of cars and they're car nerds and they're really into it. And so when they meet me and they're talking, we talk on a slightly different level with,
and they feel like you can build their trust quicker. Because
exactly.
Like one enthusiast to another.
Exactly. And I'm not the enemy, and I'm not, I'm not.
You kind of get it. Yeah.
I get cars, right?
Do you have any tips for kind of upcoming DOPs and directors that want to do more car work? How do you get the best out of a car? What's the best way to approach it in terms of?
Well, if you want it to look fast, it has to be driving fast. Don't do, you can't speed it up. I mean, you can shoot occasionally, I'll shoot sort of 19 frames if you're doing something, if you're doing a particularly fast sequence, you can shoot at a slightly undercrank frame rate. I think, safety is so, God, it's so
how
important.
do you get those, go just play it again, because there's those jousts. Is that a joust when a car's coming swing?
Yeah, so in the pitch you've got, so basically the cars, you're tracking vehicles here and the cars, doing that one. Yeah. And tracking vehicles on a forward mount, so you're driving towards, and the car is basically doing a left turn.
Yeah.
And that's just about timing, but it's also about knowing that your tracking vehicle has an exit point. If something goes wrong and this car fails to make the turn, can this car get out of the way?
Right.
So you've got to be really, there's certain things that we do that are dangerous, but you do them in the safest way possible. And you've got to make a way of, you've got to create a space where everyone is very clear of, you're passing driver to driver, you're not passing, oh, your left, my left, you've got, you create a language where, and you check in with the pro driver of the car, you check in with the the driver of the tracking vehicle, the Ukraine, and everyone, before you go, everyone is absolutely clear. Maybe do a low speed rehearsal. You've got to get it absolutely that just the stage direction almost is
bulletproof.
Bulletproof. And then you can start to wind it up and get faster. And usually I will hand over to the drivers, the Ukraine driver and the pro driver of the car, for them to run the cues, because actually it's not my job to tell them when to go. It's my job to tell them what I'm after. Oh fuck, I keep hitting the microphone. It's my job to tell them what I want from a shot.
And let them do it the best way.
Let them do it the best way.
The safest way they can feel.
Exactly. And, to do it safely. And, when you're working in LA, or London, you're working with the best pro drivers, the best Russian arm, Ukraine drivers and arm operators and camera operators. When I've worked in other countries, the gear can be there, but the skill set, you just have to moderate your expectations, because you just have to very quickly understand.
Dial into the skill level you're dealing with.
Exactly.
And not to over...
I can do shots in LA I can't do in other countries, because it's just not... It's just the skill set's not there. And, they want to do it, but it's my job to say no, because actually it's too fucking dangerous. I've heard horror stories of people dying, and it's like it's not worth it. And there's no need for it. And you just got to do it in a way that is safe. In terms of doing more, I think gimbals are so amazing now, right? Like stabilized heads. There's a very big difference between like a Ronin stabilized head and a flight head, where the flight head is what they're using on movies and commercials, and if you're taking that around a racetrack, that can handle the G-force, that can handle handle it. The amount of times I've seen Ronins on racetracks, and they just like one corner and they just like that, and they just can't cope. And so it's really difficult to get the level of stuff we do at this level when you're a starter. But that's maybe not what you should be trying to do. What you should be trying to do is getting up early, getting the magic hour, getting amazing locations, and shooting. Some of the best, sort of most popular car films aren't on the internet, content wise, the ones with hundreds of thousands of views. They're not shot on Ukraine and stuff. They're actually a camera on sticks overlooking amazing mountain paths, or and they've got a drone shot in it, and it's just about light, and it's about making sure the sun is in the correct place for the car to look great. And
what's your tips on sun and car relationship?
Always 3/4 back, essentially. 3/4 backlight, and that's something I know when I'm scouting locations on my Bentley film. Like, we were looking at shooting it either in Croatia or in...
Should we get the Bentley film up?
Where were we go? Either Croatia or somewhere else in the mountains. And literally before going to the mountains, I looked at the map, and all the roads were north-south. And it was just like, there's no way we can get the level of beauty light we want. It's not going to work, because the sun is going to be in the wrong place at all times. And, and... It was. I remember someone saying, "Oh, that'll win you a job in America," and you're like on a call, because you can just having that slight knowledge. It just when I'm scouting, I like to that this is all super low level, but it's just that blue hour stuff where it's just like just about form and shape and.
So that's first thing. That's first light in the morning.
So that's the hour before the sun has peaked over, and then you get an hour of the sun peaked over, and that's this stuff, and then you get into sort of more. This is sort of golden hour. So you get blue hour, golden hour, and then...
So blue hours, when the sun's lighting the sky...
you should tell me this. You're...
I know.
I've just heard it. No. I mean...
And then the sun rises, and that's the first sun.
And
that's the
golden hour is like below 42 degrees in the sky, right?
Right.
Something like that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So when it's 42 degrees above the horizon, and then above that, you're going to get blown, and you can do interior space.
So it's basically a race for shots and first
light or last thing at night. And it's a lot easier to do it last thing at night, because you've got the data set up and prep and practice, whereas getting in
the dark
tracking vehicle
for that first
it's horrific. It's horrific.
Yes, and that's usually my point, is that you don't expect to get as much as you hope.
Exactly. But if you are an aspiring car filmmaker, then it's about amazing locations in amazing light. And actually, that costs little. You need a cool car. You're probably not going to get your hands on a press car from Ferrari or BMW. Or actually, do you have a mate with a cool boxy Beamer or a, you know, something older, you know, that's
it's got character.
Or that's just got a bit of that shows that you know about cars a little bit, you know, that you go, you know, there's no point, you know, you do it, you know, is there someone who's got a cult car that, you know, there's no point going with a, you know, sort of like a Vauxhall Astra, you know, but you know, has someone got a, you know, cool 3 Series BMW from the 90s, you know, just, you know, beaten up, doesn't matter. But you take that to Wales in the sunshine and you shoot it on sticks and maybe get a couple of drone shots, and then suddenly you've got something there. And, you know, a GoPro to get some wheel shots, and, you know, and maybe get some interiors of, you know, the steering wheel with the light coming through. That's all doable on no money. No money at all. And actually, it's just about just getting off your arse and doing it. You know, stay in a climber's hut, you know, just make it cheap. Do you know, you and a mate, just go and do it. I mean, that's what I'd say to anyone who wants to be a filmmaker. It's so easy now to, you know, it used to be when I was coming out, it was harder. You needed more people. Now you can do it on your phone with the Blackmagic app, right? It's got time code on it. You can set the aspect ratio. You can set everything up and just film it. It just there's no excuse. And I'm not the first person to say this, and I won't be the last. But literally, you know, and cars is, I would just say, don't try and do the high octane stuff until that is the high level skill stuff. You know, that is lock-offs, that's people who know what they're doing, that's safety. And because I've heard of too many people doing stuff unsafely, and it's just that's not the way. And I guess that can be frustrating.
People hear stories about the French Connection and get a bit excited, don't they? So don't basically.
No, exactly. They were just lunatics. But you know, I think, you know, but they still, you know, on French Connection, they did it kind of for real, but they still had massive amount of crew and
they had to probably very, very skilled people doing it.
Exactly.
Very experienced.
You know, and we were talking earlier about a little bit of knowledge being very dangerous. There's nothing more dangerous than someone who thinks they're a good driver, and you kind of go, there is a level. The pro drivers I work with are all ex-racing drivers, and the level that their skill is, there's a big difference between a pro driver and a stunt driver. If you want a stunt driver, you want someone who's going to launch it off a ramp or drive through a wall or do a pipe ramp or, you know, do something, you know, where they get bashed about and don't care. That's very different to a pro driver who can literally stop it, turn it, whatever, on a sixpence, and it's like literally it's point perfect every time. They're very different skills, and you need to know what you want to be doing. And there's nothing worse than, oh yeah, my mate, he's pretty tasty behind a wheel. Oh God, you're just like, oh fuck, that's never going to go well, because you need to understand the limitations and just be safe. Just be safe. Concentrate on making a car look beautiful first, and then, you know, as you get into, you know, more paid stuff, then you can start to level up and start to, you know, do more high octane stuff. I mean, you can do stunty stuff, but you need to know what you're doing and need to work with people who know what they're doing, and that's really, really important.
Brilliant advice. Yeah, that's really good. That's going to be one of our clips. So going back, let's go back to the pitch again, because I've got a couple of more questions to ask you on the pitch. There's a couple of close-up shots of the wheels, shots of the badges at the beginning. Yeah. Do you do those in the studio with moving lights?
Essentially, poor man's process trailer. So in America, we call it a low loader. In America, we call it a process trailer, and it's a poor man's process trailer where so this is all tracking vehicle. That is literally moving lights, moving camera, and you know, interiors, dials, everything is, you know, even some of the wheel stuff is poor man's process, because it's just, you get a more satisfactory shot.
And explain that that's poor man. So that's not on the low loader.
No, it's not on it. So
that's in a studio.
That's in a studio. that's literally just, some lights shining into lens, or just
camera.
flaring, and camera. You can literally, you can just shape the camera, or you can just move it jagged movement. It depends what kind of thing you're going for.
Do you have any special rigs for spinning lights and moving lights?
I mean, maybe some mirrors on lights occasionally. I mean,
so mirror cubes or mirror.
Yeah, exactly. Just to give it a bit of thing. Or you're just literally just getting a head and just bouncing it into the lens, and just. I
got a laser cutter in the workshop, and I started building these little fins that you can like little helicopter fins.
Oh, okay,
past. They're quite effective as well.
It's about movement and energy, and we do it on every job. We do, badges. You want to get, this is where we're making commercials, because we're brand. It's about the brand. You want to get a great shot of the badge lit beautifully. You can shoot a badge on the run on a Ukraine, like a tracking vehicle with gyro stabilized head and long lens, and it will look cool. But actually, if you want to make the badge look amazing, you can give it a bit of shape and stuff, and a bit of negative fill and whatever in the studio.
It's way more controllable,
and it's more controllable, and you can still give it energy. So I mean, that's where the craft comes in. Whether that's necessarily making films about cars anymore, that's making logos now. So but that's fine, because it's
all part of it.
It's all part of it.
They're going to want to see their badge at some point.
And actually, I still get excited about doing poor man's process stuff, because you kind of like, it's cool.
What do you call it? Poor man's process.
Poor man's process trailer. Because I work quite a lot in America, and I guess it would be poor man's low loader over here. Yeah. I mean,
so they call it a process trailer.
So basically, it's a very low profile, low to the ground trailer that you can put a car on. And traditionally, you'd use them. You can put a car on it, and then you can put lights on it, and then you can put cameras around, so you can shoot dialogue scenes. Now, what's starting to happen now is you've got the volume, or the virtual production, where you've got giant LED screens, and you can basically film a background, and then or use Unreal to create that background. Now, it's an amazing thing, and it's great for the Clone Wars, or what is it, the what was the Star Wars thing, Mandalorian. They did a lot of that on that. And then there's a movie on a pirate ship, and they use a lot of the seascapes on that, and it's incredible for the actors, because they're not just in a blue screen, and they can actually
engage
see
with
stuff
around surroundings.
And it's amazing, because if you're doing a car, you've got one with an LED ceiling piece, your lighting suddenly becomes incredibly real, and you're not having to do those weird Louvre fan things, because basically your lighting is very much environmental, and it does, you need to augment it, but you get really interesting stuff. Now, if you're doing a comedy dialogue or a bit of dialogue in a car, rather than trying to lock off a street and trying to contend with other traffic, and trying to go round in circles, which is, oh god, it's a nightmare. If you can do it in a studio, and then suddenly you can be on a dolly, and you do a track in, and you can come round that way, and blah blah blah, suddenly you've got so much more time and control, that you can give the actors more presence of just more time for them to do their craft.
Have you seen
amazing.
Have you seen The Killer, Fincher?
Yes.
Yeah, that's all shot virtual. All the driving shots.
I can't remember them.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing,
right?
Because they, most people wouldn't know that's virtual production, and that's usually the example I give when people are kind of a little bit adverse to virtual production. Well, if it's done well, if it's blended properly, and as you say, it's a light. It is a light. It's augmenting the light. It's the key.
It's also giving the actor, they're not having to think about driving. They're not having to think about anything. They literally, you can just run it, and they can just sit there, and they can do as many takes as they want, or they can work in how they like to work, rather than, right, you've got this 100 meters to get it there, just do it. It's like
exactly.
Fucking hell, the pressure.
And also, you can hold on to the time of day as well. So if you are 100%. Wanting to get that blue hour,
I think it really works on a long form where you're coming back to the same sort of scene. I think it's not quite there for commercials, because it's just, it's expensive to set up. You kind of have to know exactly where you are. It's a bit trickier in commercials.
Do you think, though, when AI starts getting involved in the creation of these unreal worlds, these environments, when they're prompt-driven environments, when you're saying desert with Cadillacs and suddenly bang, there's desert with Cadillacs on the screen as a 3D world that you can move around. That's when it might get really interesting for lower budget production.
I mean, low budget. Trouble is, it's it costs 30 grand just to turn them on because the amount of power they use.
Yeah,
right?
there's a lot. There's a lot of new technology coming out. There's a lot of these new studios, the smaller studios with permanent rigs being built in London now and all over the world, presumably. So I think it is gonna, it's like all technology at the moment. It's just for the elite,
the early adopters, and it will get cheaper. And I think it's here to stay. It's a great tool. It's the same as CGI. It's the same as a drone. Is it the right tool? Don't use it as a catch-all, but use it when it's really necessary. And AI. I mean, I'm a massive fan of AI. I think God, can you imagine? AI, here's the NHS budget. Can you sort it out and tell us why we're fucked? And it'll just go right. You can save this, and this. I mean, it'll just be
kill humans, wouldn't it?
Well,
that's it. That would save the budget.
Yeah. Anyone above 85, just let them go. I mean, I don't. I think AI is here to stay, and it's going to happen, and it's not going to take our jobs. But people who understand how to use it are going to be the ones who are most successful. And I think you've got to learn. You've got to engage. You can't. It's another tool.
You can't be the guy getting emails printed out.
No, you can't. Well, I mean, I don't know. You talk about, Christopher Nolan doesn't have a mobile phone. You're like,
but if you're Christopher Nolan, you kind of get away with it.
But did he always? Did he never have one?
I think at the start of his career,
I don't know.
As a runner, maybe he needed a mobile phone.
I've got to be contactable. Maybe he didn't. Maybe that was his absolute mindset. I don't know.
It's like these young DOPs that
Chris, what did you ever have a mobile phone ever? He watches this, right?
Yeah. Hope.
I don't know. I think I think the AI thing, the trouble with commercials is the amount of stakeholders, the client, the agency, the this, the that, all the levels of people. And with virtual production, you have to set up the backgrounds and approve them and go, this is our background, this is what we're shooting. It becomes like a location, right?
Yeah, right, and it's like taking the whole post-production schedule and put it in the pre-production stage.
Which it's very difficult for them to get their head around it. And I've spoken to some post supervisors who've gone, we basically have done it all virtual production, and then we've had to re-key it and roto it out because they decided they wanted that to be in a desert, not a jungle.
Because they're used to that process of being able to change their minds later.
So it is going to be a bit of a shift in that. And it'll happen, it'll get there, but, it's not going to happen overnight. And but I think it's an amazing tool. And, what's also nice is the poor man's process element of it. Rather than doing it in a black studio with some lights flipping around, you can get into your bodywork and you get reflections of whatever you're driving, the street you're driving down. It's amazing.
This screen is our poor man's process.
Amazing.
We've been shooting little music videos on this.
That's amazing.
And the idea, it's like the magic trick of your Lexus. It's a similar thing, sleight of hand. So you set someone up in a screen close in, maybe with some reflective objects or whatever. So you see all the reflections working. You go, oh, that's an immersive environment. It's a real environment. So when you cut to the wide shot and it's on green screen and it's not, you forgive it because you've already been told it's an immersive 100%. Environment. Do you see what I mean?
Well, it's that trick of the first scene in your movie needs to be amazing and massive and cinematic,
suck 'em all
and then the rest of the film can be a two-hander in a room, and everyone's like, wow, what an amazing scale of that film. It's great. It's all sleight of hand, isn't it?
Sleight of hand. Wonderful. So let's move on to I think we're ready for Fred Olsen now, are we?
Which is like a massive departure of like just very different again.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what we got left. We got Limitless. I'd like to do Fred Olsen because since we're still talking commercials, and we can go back to more TV afterwards. Yeah. So let's go Fred Olsen, which I think is, if I had to look up the definition of cinematic documentary in a dictionary, I think this would pop up, wouldn't it?
I hope so. Thank you. I mean, it was really interesting as a process. So this was 3 old geezers from advertising: Walter Campbell, Nick Bell, and Jonathan Davis, who is a producer, legendary producer. Nick Bell, legendary ECD, JWT, Leo Burnett's, loads of McDonald's work, and then Walter Campbell, Guinness, Dunlop, Mercedes Lucky Star. I mean, like his CV is just like it's like clang, the awards literally just dropping off. So they got in touch because I'd worked with Jonathan before and I knew Nick. I'd never met Walter, and they got in touch and they were like, "We've got this director-client brief. We're the agency on it, and we want to do this film, and we want it to be a day in the life, and it could be any day on any ship around the world of this cruise line company, Fred Olsen." And it was like, okay, this is really exciting, because it could be, from the moment, it was very much like, okay, I can use my TV travelogue, grand tour, adventure sort of methodology, but with fancier cameras, lenses, and a bit more time for light and setup. So that was kind of the methodology around it. So you've got like a tiny crew.
Let's keep replaying it.
You've got a tiny crew and DOP, focus puller, second AC, gaffer with...
Who was the DOP on this?
So Dan Bronx.
Oh, it's Dan Bronx.
Yeah, and we shot on the LF, and we were on some Arri something or others, really lovely, beautiful Arri lenses. They were, I can't remember. You'd know.
Signatures, maybe?
No, fancier than that. They did a article in that Arri magazine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, the NDA, what they call the DNAs.
Is it?
That's
maybe something like that. Really fancy lenses. So beautiful main unit camera setup. We then used the DJI Ronin 4D, which is basically a drone without propellers. It's amazing. It's like, we call it a chicken, and it's basically like this. It's a stabilized head, but with an integral camera. So it's not like a Ronin where you've got the thing that you hold and then you put your DSLR on it and it has to work it all out, and then every time you move it goes like that. This is basically, it's rock solid. It's amazing. It's basically the same camera that's on the Inspire 2 and 3 drones. So, and you can put, you've got some Leica lenses that you can put on there, like little flat pancake lenses. But you can also put some Sony lenses on, I believe. But the tracking, the face tracking on this thing is incredible, and you can literally just walk it around like a gimbal. And with the monitor system's amazing, and you can remote control the head with the monitor. So like someone can be operating, and you can. I mean, it's phenomenal.
What's it called again?
It's for Ronin 4D.
The Ronin 4D.
Yeah. It's a bit noisy in the shadows, but look at me like pretending I know what I'm talking about. But it grades up beautifully, and I don't think you'd know which is which. Apart from the fact it's moving.
Can you talk us through?
That's no, it's not. None of it's here. That's a drone. Oh, that's a 4D up there. That's a 4D.
So you can walk it around like a gimbal, and then you can let it go, and it can be into a drone?
No, there's no propellers on it. So it's literally, it's just a gimbal, but it's just got the camera integrated into it. So it's all self-balancing, and it works rock solid. I used it on another thing where I'm doing a stunt thing and we're running through some woods, and you can put it on sport mode where it turns the stabilization down. But so you basically can run around with it, so it feels jagged, but it doesn't go completely mental. It doesn't completely mental. Or you can run around with it on full tracking mode, and it's like rock solid, and you're running at full tilt, and basically it's tracking someone's head.
I love the sound of this.
It's amazing.
The problem I have with gimbals is like you said, they just
oh shit.
They're constantly rebalancing, and it just takes all the energy away from the shoot.
These, like, literally, they live in a box. You take them out, you turn them on, they're ready. You know, like the thing where you turn a drone on, it goes like that, and then it's ready. And same thing. They're amazing. Are you looking for one on eBay at the moment? I mean, they're $5,000. They're like, it's a lot of money if you've got no money, but they're nothing if you're like if you're an owner operator of gear. $5,000. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I love the idea of bringing that out of the box and saving a shoot with one of those, because that sounds like a real...
It just meant with this, we didn't need a dolly, we didn't need a Steadicam, we could literally just go, let's do a tracking shot through a kitchen. Let's just fucking do it. You just pick it up and do it. And we're on a speedboat in here. and with speedboats going bang, bang, bang like that,
Yeah.
and basically the thing's going like that, and you're just like,
Wow.
it's incredible. It's
It does
it's
sound incredible.
phenomenal.
Yeah. So what kit did you had? So you had the big setup with
the LF, you know, for portraiture and light and amazing
and
stuff.
Just sticks, was it?
Yeah, that was just sticks and handheld, and a bit handheld, but mainly sticks, because we wanted to keep it very. We just wanted to keep it very beautiful.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we wanted to keep it like with this sort of sense of, you know, sort of time and moment and just.
It's sort of tactility.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, you know, having beautiful frames. And we had this 4D, which is, you know, just a phenomenal bit of kit. You know, you could shoot a whole movie on it. It would be, you know, it's a bit limited on lenses. It can, you know, but, you know, it's 4K. You can go to Super 35. You can go, you know, wherever. It's amazing. Then we had 2 drones. We had the Inspire 2 because the 3 hadn't quite made it to Europe yet. They were having supply issues. And then we had a Mavic Cinema Pro, because there's an anchor shot of the anchor falling into the sea. Wanted that high speed, so we flew this tiny drone that does 200 frames or 120 frames, and that's how we got that shot.
Yeah, I've heard about this little drone.
Yeah, and it's cute. You know, you wouldn't want to shoot all of your landscapes on it, but it's amazing. It's really, really super cool.
So we've also got mood boards as well. That I don't know if you have there. We'll have a look at those in a sec. So how many days were you on the...
Right, so we did a day in Dubrovnik to try and get some... The idea was to try and... We had sort of 6 or 7 or 8, some humans that were friends of the cruise line, and they basically gave them a week cruise. So we could use them for a day in Dubrovnik to try and get some sort of on-land stuff that then we could mix in with... our on-ship stuff, and then add some stock footage in there, and suddenly it all sort of starts to melt together, and you kind of go, oh, well, that person's in that shot, therefore we must have gone all the way around the world, when actually we just did a little cruise around Europe. We were in Dubrovnik for a day. We were in the ship for 5 days, I think, or 6 days.
And is it all available light? Is it just...
I think in the interiors... I mean, it's tricky, right? So you're in a hotel, a cruise ship. Now, I think it was weird. Like in my very, very early days as a content maker, I did a film for Candy and Candy for One Hyde Park, like this incredibly expensive building. And that building, you could turn a camera anywhere and it's just incredible because the finish is exquisite. You go to top hotels, they always look a bit tatty. When you're on a cruise ship, they're a working environment because they're a ship. They're not always, you know, the cruise ship actually was pretty good looking, but actually it's not the most beautiful environment. You can't just swing a camera. So it was quite difficult because we didn't have a lot of time, money and manpower for lights. So it was like, well, we've got to use a lot of available light, shoot a lot of sort of backlight and just sort of be and underexpose a lot, just to sort of really try and bring the beauty out of try and bring the emotion out of the environment rather than show the environment. We're basically going, right, what's the emotional journey of this holiday you're on? It's not about, you know, look at this. I don't want to see everything.
The sky and the sunsets than it is about seeing the interior.
Well, and if you are going to see an interior, what do you see? It's about epic in the detail. It's about knowing, you know, it's about thread count rather than sort of seeing the whole room, right? And it was just very much about being about either we're super tight and close or on a portrait, or we're epic wide. You know, there's nothing in between.
And it's a vista,
So it's sort of like
a spaghetti western with an animal,
I guess,
close up of the eyes and the big landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's like, you know, but it's just trying to get that emotion of what do you feel when you're on holiday? Is it like that it's the texture of a book you're reading when you turn the page, and then you look out and you see a massive sky, and that's to me what you know.
Lovely. That's a lovely. That's a very poetical way of putting it as well.
You know.
So these are your mood boards.
Yeah, so these are
references.
These are references and mood boards. So basically, I literally I broke down the script and just scoured the internet for, you know, hundreds and hundreds of pictures of like of pretty things that we could do, that we could, look to replicate or take some inspiration from, or, the sun through the curtains, or the, cup of tea or coffee, or, I love particular. Sorry, can you go back one? That middle central one. It's just some linen, some pillows, but you kind of go, that looks really comfortable, and really I really get what that's all about. It's just a bit of sun and some pillows, and actually, but it's what I'm talking about. It's that tactility, that emotion, that real sense of like, I really can imagine myself in that and sleeping, and oh wow, so there's that. And then I don't know, so I just went through every scene, every thing of just going, right, well, what's feasible that we can get, what isn't, let's try. These are just sort of ideas. It's sort of ideas. I basically took their script and turned it into a pictogram thing. It was always going to be split screen and always going to be lots of imagery. And so it was all about trying to create, rather than just going, oh, let's get a load of images and stick them up. It was trying to create a narrative with each sort of screen.
The relationship between the images.
Exactly.
As well,
I was looking at a lot of, the amazing beginning montage of Grand Prix with the Saul Bass split screen. It's just phenomenal. And then obviously the one in what's that film? I can't remember it.
70s, 60s.
60s, and then they did I'll remember it in a minute. It's like the one we all know, and it's amazing. It's about a bank robber, and it's art thief.
What's it called?
But it's actually a love story.
Oh my God.
I know, and I must have watched that over and over again, and just really broken up. There's a polo scene in that, and it's just like amazing how they've done it and condensed what could have been a half-hour sequence into about 2 minutes, and it's just really the power it has is it's going to come back to me in a minute. But,
Always put a subtitle up when we remember it.
Yeah. Well, so it was just about trying to, just trying to create that narrative and create that emotion, and it was all about, light and that magic of just beautiful light. And
sort of magic realism type kind of,
Yeah, I guess. But it's that thing of, I've done it a couple of times where you almost do a split day where you get up early, you shoot the morning light, you have 4 hours off at lunchtime, and then you shoot the evening light. And you've got to get buy-in from the crew. You've got to tell them, this is how we want to do it. This is what we're going to do. We're going to pay you this, and it'll cover, the overtime. It's going to be hard because you're going to, but you get that buy-in, and if people are into it, they're into it, and you get a magical film out of it. So, because you just get the best light, and you're almost getting 2 days in one. And I don't agree with like making crew work crazy long hours. I think that's insane. But when you're, so as long as you give people the day off, the time off in the middle of the day, and you're making sure they're safe by, they don't have to drive anywhere or whatever, then it can work really well. So, and people can buy into it, and it's great. We had a great gaffer on it. He was just a one-man band where he was like, he's a really good gaffer. And he had a couple of tubes and, a couple of LED panels and a bit of this and that, and just a trolley that he wheeled about. And, we didn't, he was happy to do it on his own. He didn't have any sparks or anyone with him. And just really got involved.
That's really possible now, to have battery lights and to have one guy.
But also just it's the attitude of like, it was that he was up for it. And I actually bumped into him the other day, and it was just so nice to see him. Like, you kind of go, actually, it was so nice to like, it was almost like a shared journey, like where everyone was. That's what I've always tried to do. Is I love having fun and enjoying myself when I'm working, because it's a true privilege. Even if you are making a nappy commercial, well, I don't, or detergent or whatever, it's still better than most people's job, right? It's still fun. You're still getting to play with cameras and good people and whatever. So actually, the fact that I get to do it on nice, amazing, interesting stuff is just like, I'm, just that. No one's
pitch yourself.
Don't find out. Don't tell anyone. But working with great people, getting them to work hard because they want to work hard and do their best work because they want to, because they love the pride in their work, and we all make something amazing. And you can always tell when you've made something good, because all the crew, you post it on Instagram and all the crew end up posting it, and you're kind of like, we've done all right.
The association.
Because you know, how many commercials are out there that you just go, oh fuck, I'm not sure I'd be proud to work on that. And it's always not, you know, you do get it where, you know, some jobs are just purely for money, some are purely for the show reel and you don't get paid well, and then some occasionally you get both, and that's amazing, where everyone gets paid well and you get a great piece of work.
It's good for people to know that that's kind of pretty much exists at most levels of commercials, isn't it? Where whether you're a videographer or you've been doing it for a while and you're doing big stuff, you're always going to have the money cow stuff, and then you're going to have the passion projects. And it's balancing those two that's very important.
Where you've got to try and get to is that your money cow stuff is still quite good. That's you know, that's where you that's the goal. And you know, it's funny, when I was younger, I was like, why I can't get any work. And I went to see a head of TV somewhere, like a cool agency, and they were like, I was going, yeah, but you know, look at this guy and he's working all the time. They go, yeah, but why would you want his career? You know, it's shit. You know, you've got some bits of work on there that, you know, it's going to take you longer. But
eventually you get. But yeah, and that's a really good tip for the younger filmmakers. Again, is that be patient, because if you stick to your guns and you do cool work and good work, then that's going to be your career doing that work. If you sell out too early on, then you've
don't
lost,
do that. Whatever you do, you know, yes, it might be great. You go, oh my God, I've just done a stack of cash doing that detergent ad. I have to keep slagging off detergent ads. I'm really sorry. Fairy Liquid, if you ever... but
that's you out of the pitching process of Fairy,
Procter & Gamble, he's dead to us. Unilever, dead. I'm like... but, you know, I think... You know, that's the difference between producers and directors, and massive segue. But, you know, a producer can have an incredible company that, you know, does a load of sort of, you know, money jobs and does a couple of cool things a year, and they can shout about cool things a year, but they can still live in a beautiful house and send their kids to private school, and I have like, oh my God. You know. Whereas a director, you know,
you live by your last job. It's like, what have you done for me lately?
Exactly.
What's the last good bit of work you've done?
But I also think, coming back to that thing of like, you know, the mental health aspect of it, you've got to look at, what did I do 2 years ago? All right, I was doing something that, you know, wasn't that big a budget, wasn't that good. A year ago I was doing something really cool. All right, I haven't had work for 2 months, but actually I've been on an upward trajectory. For all that time I've been on an upward trajectory, and that's really important to remember. Don't judge yourself by the last 2 months. Judge yourself by the last 5 years of your trajectory. And I think that, you know, you kind of go, actually I've been progressing, I've been you know, I'm moving up, and that's really important. Obviously it's really hard, because you do judge yourself in your last bit of work, and that keeps you tight and that keeps you hungry, because if your last piece of work wasn't great, then you've got to go and get another one. And you know, and I often think there are too many people in some parts of our industry that don't judge themselves on the last bit of work. Like, you know, the difference between a great account human, like someone who deals with the client and the agency, they're the conduit between the client and the agency, the creatives of the agency. You know, you can get incredible ones that really fight for the creative work and really understand what you're trying to do, and you know, they're incredible and they're like gold dust. And then you get ones who just want to say yes to the client so they retain the agency's business, and you're like, actually, if they were all freelance and they get judged on the quality of the work they did,
they wouldn't be like that.
They would all be fighting for the creative. You know,
that's a really good point. So Limitless.
So Limitless is a pretty big TV show for Disney Nat Geo, and it stars Chris Hemsworth, and essentially it's about longevity science. So and it's exec produced by Darren Aronofsky. So there's some quite big names floating about, and you're kind of like, Darren Aronofsky, Chris Hemsworth, Disney, Nat Geo, and you're like, okay. I did 4 of the 6 episodes on season 1, and I'm about to do 1 of the episodes on season 2. We're only doing 4 eps on season 2, and schedule wise I can only do 1, which is fine. And it's all about, each episode takes a theme of, like, you know, stress. How do you, like, this first one is stress, and he's, you know, how do you regulate your stress? How do you work with your stress? How do you make stress not kill you? Another one was I strength, and it was him climbing a rope, and so they're sort of very much entertainment science docs with a big movie star, and
the latest science in
I mean, we had Disney's checkbook, right? So we had the best scientists, the best access to amazing humans of top in their field of this, that, or the other. And so it was like, and Darren has, much as his feature films are one thing that he does, but he is very much into his company process. Part of their mission statement is to bring science to the masses. So, this is very much his sort of thing of, and his producing partner is an ex-neuroscientist. He's done an amazing podcast or essay about never dissect your own monkey's brain or something. It's amazing. So, it's like, but they're like top brains, like huge brains. And like, then they're,
Sounds intimidating being in a room with this.
Well, it was amazing. And, I've worked with some people, Clarksons, and and you kind of go, that's a level of human, and then you're turning up on set for first day, and you're about to direct Chris Hemsworth, and it's like, okay, this is another level. You've got Disney. This is, Grand Tour and Top Gear was very much. Top Gear was BBC Two. Yes, it had 350 million viewers, but it was BBC Two, so we were very under the radar. And Andy Willman, the exec, always kind of kept everyone's sort of egos down. So, it was like, but suddenly we're doing a massive one. It was when we shot Limitless, it was the biggest budget TV show in production of factual entertainment on television. So it was like, massive, and you've got eyes on you, and and it was during COVID, so we were flying into Australia doing quarantines. Darren was there for the first couple of shoot days, first block, and he was incredibly generous with me, just talking to me about how, A-lister star management, and, he actually let me get on with it. He didn't get too involved. He wasn't, he was very much exec producer involvement rather than like, push me out of the way and go, no, let's do this, let's do that. It was amazing.
So let's talk about this A-lister star management.
Yeah.
Because that's something that I'm sure we'd all like to hear what the tips on that would be. Not that I'm ever going to need it, but but it'd be interesting to know.
I mean, it really helps that Chris is a great human. He's like, he left LA to bring his kids up in Byron Bay because he didn't want them growing up in LA because it's sort of toxic and whatever. So you kind of going into it, you're going, well, he's Aussie. He's kind of he sounds like a decent bloke. Yeah. But at the end of the day, he is very much, there's a reason he's an A-lister, and that's, he's very clever. He, understands his brand. He understands what works, and as I went in, weirdly, coming from a commercial background, I understand brand. I understand advertising. I understand brand recognition, brand guardianship. So I very much approached him with that, with a level of brand guardianship. So it's like, I don't want to make you look stupid. There's that. But then there's also talking to them in a way that is just, they're humans. They want to understand what they're doing. They want to feel held. They want to understand that what you're doing and that they can trust you. And it's about trying to build that trust very quickly. I literally remember the first thing I said to Chris. We were doing the fasting episode, and it was like, morning. I've done a fast. I did a 7-day fast. I felt horrific during that. Emotional, crying, angry, terrible. I'm now going to be working with you for the first time ever, and you're doing a fast. This is, this is only going to go well. So, and from that, he sort of laughed and understood that, actually it was sort of a little bit.
The fact that you'd been there and you'd been through those emotions of the fast, that must have been really helpful for him to.
I guess,
Yeah.
you know, it's the fact that I'd done one, you know,
Yeah.
the fact, and I guess that's why I led with that, because it's like, I've done one, I know, you know, it's painful, it's horrific, and we're going to make you do stuff and work through it.
And he hadn't fasted in his life?
No, I mean, he'd done bits of intermittent stuff, but this was like a 4-day nothing water fast, you know, so, you know, it was, but he, you know, at the end of the day, I got to know him. Because I did so many episodes, I got to know him really well by the end of it, and by the end of it, we built a real trust, and you know, a friendship. No, not a friendship.
We go on speed dial.
Yeah. I text him occasionally, and just you know, but it's not, and I get them back. So you know, I'm not. No, it's ridiculous. But he's, you know, actually genuinely, he's committed and he's a professional, right? So he doesn't want his time being wasted, but he will give, if he feels that you've got it, and you know, he will give you the time. You know, his diary's a nightmare. He's a massively busy human. So when he gives you the day is yours.
He's 100%
Yeah. You know, and he's not, you know, so and I think it's interesting, you know, sort of as a runner, I worked on, you know, many things with many people. You know, David Bowie was one of the nicest humans I've ever met, because I worked on a music video as a runner, and he was there, and it was just like, he was delightful because he was truly, I worked on Spice Girls videos. They were a bit of a pain in the ass. You know, I worked with Posh on her own, and she was lovely. So it's really interesting how group dynamic, and you know, I think it can be hard work working with A-listers, or it can be a delight. And I think as long as you've done your prep and your homework and aren't intimidated by it, you know, because at the end of the day, you know, I do know of A-listers who, you know, talk to me about Top Gear and go, oh God, I love just sitting down on the sofa and watching Top Gear on a Sunday night. And you're like, what? You're like, all right. It's quite, you know, they are quite normal. So, and I think there's that weird thing of like that professional relationship where, you know, it's a very different thing of meeting a star in the street or a restaurant and going, oh, can I have a selfie? They're like, that's very different to meeting them on set and working with each other, because there's like a sort of an understanding between when you're on set, you're in a professional environment, and you give each other some respect. So it's sort of, it's easier, you know. But I also like to take an AeroPress and a coffee grinder with me and give my stars a nice coffee in the morning. If you're in a jungle or somewhere horrific, making sure they have coffee.
That's a good start to the day for them.
It's a good start for anyone.
Yeah. The perfect coffee.
Yeah.
Much like what we served you earlier, right?
Yeah, exactly. That was delicious. I think, you know, anyway.
Literally the worst coffee that I think we could possibly have found. Sorry.
It's quite
You need to improve on the coffee, guys.
Yeah.
He didn't even drink it. You see how little he drank? He's like, I need a glass of water straight away. Sorry about that.
Just buy a cafetiere. It's easy.
Yeah. Okay. We have to. You have to give some tips.
Yeah, I'll give some tips. Yeah. But I mean, you know, working with Chris, and you know, it's that fine line of pushing him into quite uncomfortable situations, fasting or climb this rope or train here, do this, do that. You know, making him do quite uncomfortable things, but to feel good about it. And you know, and then
are you looking for that sort of searching for that human vulnerability as well in that?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's what I kind of, really interesting you say that, because when I first interviewed for Top Gear, I'm like, you know, they'd been a hit show for years, and I'm going in, I'm like, I did the last 2 seasons of Top Gear, so I'm not like Top Gear through and through. But, you know, I'm like, what can I bring to it? You know, and they actually said, well, what do you want to bring to it? And I'm like, and actually it was some humanness was, you know, I'm not, you know, ever going to say that, you know, Jeremy, James and Richard were ever sort of had that sort of human vulnerability, but trying to just soften it a little bit and try and give it a little bit of human.
And it gives it more of a rounded kind of, more personality on screen.
And that's what you get with, that's I think why Clarkson's Farm has been so successful, is because Jeremy is you do see his shortcomings. He's not the bombastic expert anymore. He's the person who doesn't know, and you see him vulnerable, and you see him like failing. And I think that's what people want to see. It was interesting, going back to Limitless, like all the treatments say, and then we see Chris fail this, and you go, Chris doesn't fail. He's at one point, he's in an ice bath with Wim Hof, and he won't get out until Wim Hof gets out. And you kind of go, you've got the world expert at ice baths, and you've got Chris, who's just doesn't like losing. And we literally...
Oh, that's a test of will.
Yeah, well, we literally had to sort of tell him to get out because it was getting dangerous. Because but he didn't want to, and that's partly, he doesn't want his brand to sort of see, but it's also, that's just not how he's wired. He's wired to just fucking win. So like all these treatments that the development teams would write, and you go, and then we see him fail at this, and you're like, guys, how many times do we have to tell it? He's just, that's not it's not gonna be a failure. It's like, so it's quite learning that and understanding who their personalities are and how to work with it. It's just just a sort of empathy, essentially. It's a sort of an empathy for their brand, an empathy for them as humans, and a sort of just a sort of learning how to get them to trust you.
Anything more to say on Limitless before we move on to the Crash Bang Wallop compilation?
I mean, it was an amazing. It's just an amazing show. Just being part of that level of human, where you've got Chris, who's top level, Darren Aronofsky, who's like fucking what a legend. And I was even talking to a runner on the farm the other day, and she's like 21, and she was saying how much she thought his films were incredible. And you're like, he's cross generational. And
did he give you any little nuggets of wisdom directly, Darren Aronofsky? No, just like that first thing of like, he was saying, right, go and meet you, when the stars turn up in the morning, you go and say hello, and you go and talk them through the day. And, but he was like, he didn't necessarily, he sort of taught me so much, but there's nothing I could distill into like, he said, first thing you do is fire someone on first day. He wasn't like that sort of, he didn't, nothing like that. And, what struck me is actually like, he's a really nice, generous, kind-hearted human who cares about interest, being interested. So, it was really nice seeing them at, seeing both him and Chris at the premiere in New York, and it's sort of like, it's hugs all around. You kind of go, oh wow, that sort of feels. I feel like I'm touching that sort of strata, right? That's kind of wild. It's great. It's amazing. And you kind of go, if I do want to work in long form, movies or something, you're gonna go, that's not a bad phone book to have. Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You go, oh, can you? I've got a script.
Excellent.
But it was cool, just amazing fun. But it was during COVID, and it was hard. We were doing stuff that it was really interesting. I think Grand Tour was the first massive mega budget factual entertainment thing, whereas before you'd had like Top Gear was a big budget, but it wasn't like crazy. Suddenly the Grand Tour blew the doors off with Amazon going, oh, you can have 4 million an ep or whatever. I can't remember what the actual figure was, but it was a lot for factual entertainment. And and then Limitless and has blown the doors off again, and you're kind of like, these are massive budgets that you're able to do stuff brilliantly well, in a cinematic way.
Yeah, the level of kind of theatrical cinema, right?
Yeah, the craft, but you can it's that keeping it as a documentary and a piece of cinematic craft. It's such a weird balance. Because as an obs doc, what you really want, you just want a camera following Chris around and like just getting that naturalistic thing. But we need to make sure that the scene looks great and the lighting looks cool. So it's such a balance, such a delicate balance of light control, bit of lighting, not but keeping it fresh.
And just briefly, could you talk us through the technical side of that, from what you can remember, with regard to lighting and camera?
Well, we shot on the Venice 1.
Did you use a Rialto?
We did we? I don't know whether we'd bothered, actually. I don't think we ever needed... I think we probably used it on one of the helicopters, but we didn't. I mean, Rialto is like when they've detached the lens to the recording system, right? So you've got like the lens and the chip.
The lens head comes off.
Yeah, and then
the camera head comes off.
I know it's just for them.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah. Yeah, it's like a little mummy camera and little baby offspring with an umbilical cord attached to it.
And they're amazing, and you can. We didn't need it. We'd used that. So we used the Venice. We had the fancy recorder box on it.
So for raw recording.
Yeah. And then we had a couple of FX6s and a couple of FX3s because it's that Sony chip.
Sony through and through.
It's got that same color science. Yeah. But then we also used some Z cams, I think, which are these Chinese box cameras, which my minicams guy from the Grand Tour, he's like just next level. There's no one like him in the world where, I do car stuff with him and he does these tiny grip, tiny clamps and stuff, and like the shots he gets.
He's based in the UK, is he? He's
based in the UK.
Oh, I'd love to hear his, get his details off you. That's a useful contact to have. So he just deploys tiny cameras. And,
I mean, but they're quite big cameras, but he's like just got a way of making the grip work that's just so good.
Yeah.
But we so on top of the skyscraper, we had this, this sort of giant beam, and I needed to get a shot of Chris's face as he's walking along this beam, but I couldn't have a cameraman out on the end of this. We're 1,000 foot up in the middle of Sydney with and I've got wide shots to get, and it's like, so we had a couple of remote heads up there. We had a couple of static cameras mounted on the rig. So it was kind of it was quite a technical shoot, that one. And then the rope climbing one was very, that was actually just a cameraman on a rope. So, because actually what I wanted for that was to feel the camera was with him. Not, we were thinking, do we want a remote head or a cable cam or whatever, but actually a cameraman holding handheld, being winched up and down as Chris is climbing. Yeah, it's sort of a different level of intimacy, a different level of sort of tactileness. I guess. Yeah, a different feel, and it's
the empathy that the camera's feeling with
exactly.
Him.
Yeah. I mean, you've got your super long lenses across the valley, but and drone shots and all that shit. But just having that, that camera with him, it was a real sense of. And actually, that wasn't even my idea. It was me. I was talking to. Obviously, it was my idea. I was talking to the rigger, and we were working out how we could do it. And he was going, "Oh, okay, we could put stabilized head on, but if we put a cameraman on there, you're going to get a different thing." And it was like, "Oh, okay." And that's what being a director is for me. Is you get the experts and you go, this is what I'm trying to achieve. And they go, oh, but what about this? Or what about that? And if you did this, you did it like that. And you get all the options, and then you get to choose what the options are. And you go, yeah, all right, I love that idea of a handheld camera because it does give you that level of intimacy rather than, I was thinking, I would just get a remote stabilized head and just have that, and like they do on, they use them on helicopters. They use a drop line and they have the stabilized head at the bottom of this helicopter, so you can do dialogue stuff and they fly away. And you're like, how the fuck do they get in from that to a massive wide shot? And so we were thinking of using something like that, but actually we ended up with a human.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
So should we have a look at the Crash Bang Wallop?
Yeah. So this is a montage of some stunt stuff. Quite a lot of it's from the Grand Tour, and it was just trying to get a sense of all the stunts that I've done, the car chases, the explosions, the jumps, the helicopters, just stupid stuff that I got to do and I love doing, and it's amazing fun.
So this is basically taking you back to the child with the
This is basically
the Range Rover in there.
Yeah. This is basically a back of a lap. There you go. There's that shot I was talking about the the camera doing that, and that's some RAF stuff, and Bear Grylls jumping out of the helicopter. This film was a Grand Tour film we did, and it's very different to all the other Grand Tour films in the fact it was very scripted. It's based on the Tom Cruise movie Edge of Tomorrow. Doug Liman directed, and it's basically Tom Cruise. We're at war with aliens, and every time he gets killed. It's like Groundhog Day. He reanimates the previous morning and has 48 hours and 48. And he basically. So basically, we were doing that. So what it meant was we were shooting scene 2, 8, 28, and 48 in one location, and then we'd move locations. We're shooting it like a drama. And for the Grand Tour, the guy Jeremy couldn't get his head around it. He's like, "Oh, I can't do it. And I was like, "You've just got to trust me. It's going to work." And he's like, "Oh, fine. I'm in your hands on this one." And he trusted me. And it was one of the most satisfactory films of my career because it was so complicated in terms of which scene goes where and doing this, doing that. And it cut together beautifully and worked. And it was a great film and really funny. Quite a lot of people hate it because it's not car purists. It's quite a weird film for Grand Tour, but lots of people loved it because it's very funny and it's lots of stupidity and it's got a really fun thing about it. But for me, just shooting an action movie in 4.5 days that's that complicated, was incredible. It was great fun and amazing.
Yeah, it sets you up nicely for doing maybe theatrical stuff in the future. Yeah,
I mean, and what was lovely, it was like all the things I wanted to do as a kid of like, we're going to put some squibs in a truck and it's going to, we're going to rake it with a machine gun and then it's going to drive into a thing and blow up. It's just like this moronic, like childish thing. I'm basically a 12-year-old.
Well, it looks like you're all having a great deal of fun.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It really does.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to go forward to drop.
So these are a series of 4 films, and they're basically a great thing because they were basically for features. As a feature highlight video, and like one of them's for tie downs, like which are the hooks inside.
The script's fantastic, by the way. I love the script.
They're great, right? I mean, they're just so and it was like we've got to do them for real. So we literally had this guy pretending he tweeted that he didn't trust the tie downs being strong enough. So we basically put him in a van, tied him to the tie downs, and then raised him up. And that shot is real. That goes from his face. We've got a mini Libra head inside there, and it goes from his face and flips over as the doors open. And there he is. He's in there at that moment. The only thing that isn't quite real is that we're speeded up. The dropping is speeded up, but. It's just a little. It's for a mobile phone holder or some tie downs.
When he was being cast, the actor was being cast for this. Was he aware that might be the?
I mean, so we were laughing about this because literally you go. We did one with lions, one with him dropping, one with him on a JCB, like being spun around, and then 2 guys being like on the side of a.
We can play the others. Can you?
So can you look at any actor's CV? Yeah, I can ride a horse. Oh, I can swim. I can drive. They lie, right?
Yeah,
they all lie. We all lie on our CV. But actors, when are they ever going to get found out? Yeah, I'm fine with lions. Or I'm fine with heights. And it's like, no, really. Yeah. Are you okay with it? Because we are literally doing this for real.
So the cage was a cage that had been lion tested.
Yeah, lion tested. Yeah.
Because I was going to say, how do you know the forces involved with it? That was like, well, we tried it out. We think it's going to be okay.
Yeah, we literally the lion tamer built the cage for us.
All right.
And basically lion tested it. Yeah. But we literally had this actor in this cage with a load of meat around him, and then some lions just came and had a snack.
Which one do you think is the most terrifying? I think the lion one probably.
The lion one, there's something about the sheer presence of these lions. They are, oh my God, they're incredible things.
I bet their breath really stinks as well.
Yeah.
This is pretty close up. There's one point when it's...
Yeah, literally. And he's just sitting there and they're chewing and dropping fragments of meat and bone.
Required.
No, exactly. No, it's amazing. But he was a great sport. They were all great. I think the worst experience was the guy who's doing all the flips in the car. Because it was just grim. He's going round in circles. He's on a 5-axis head. He's like literally spinning like that, going around in circles and going up and down. And it's just like, oh my God. I mean, he was
Yeah, the temptation is to find an actor you really didn't get along with in a previous job.
No,
bring him back.
No, you just got to get people who are really up for it, and like, you know, you've got to, you know, it was in a casting. It was like, you know, I know you get asked, can you ride a horse or whatever, and everyone says like yes, and they lie, and you turn up and you've just done 3 lessons. This you have to tell us, you know.
Yeah.
But it was great. They were great little, you know, they weren't massive budget, but they were and I think this is what's missing out of advertising at the moment. They were, you know, for feature highlights. They weren't sexy, you know, main brand adverts. They were for a mobile phone holder or a fact it's been tested or whatever. They were tiny, and the creative got hold of it and turned it into something.
Oh yeah, the creative
great.
was excellent.
Yeah, and then gave it to me, and I was able to turn it into something, you know, in his script, and you know, it was great. I mean, you know, it's quite a flimsy little cage, actually, isn't it?
That's what I was thinking. Yeah,
I've never really thought about who tested
I think it
that.
flexes a bit when the line drops on top.
Yeah, I mean, the meat was quite disgusting. Yeah, I mean,
Isn't that amazing?
Cool. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But it was fun lighting stuff, you know, trying to do all this stuff for real and lighting it, and the cameraman was in there at one point, and you know, that was Gary Shaw who was in there at one point.
With the lions?
Yeah, he was in the cage with the camera.
And so you had a very
getting that shot.
Experienced lion tamer then, I would assume.
Yeah. It was you know, just a really stupid.
Yeah.
It's just really stupid. It's just.
At the end.
I love that.
Yeah. Fantastic.
The BTS of this is quite fun. You should watch that. It's it's like the BTS of all of these are quite stupid, but anyway, yeah, they were really good fun. Oh, here we go. Here how we made it. So he's a great actor. I love his face. And built this cage in Shepperton. Oh, and there's lions.
It's just the way they look at you.
Yeah.
It's that look in their eye. You're feeling like prey, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're just fearsome.
Yeah. That was after the filming, was it? He looks very relieved.
Yeah, he is. But it's like, I love it. You're like, right, you're shut in there. See you later.
That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
That looks like a lot of fun to build at shoot as well.
I mean, I don't do many jobs that aren't fun.
Yeah,
I'm quite lucky that, you know, I don't really get offered the ones that aren't fun. And if I get offered them, I probably won't win them if I pitch on them. And it's all good, really. It's great.
So I think we're going to end on the quirkiest out of your work.
Yeah.
Which is the Emirates Airlines.
Yeah. So actually, this was done probably 2007, something like that. So it's quite old, and it was an amazing digital agency and called Lean Mean Fighting Machine. And actually, the creative director on that actually went on, and I worked with him 10 years later on Lexus. Weirdly, it was like just you know, one of those, you know, and he's a great guy, great human. So Emirates had launched a new route from Sao Paulo to Dubai, was it? I can't remember the route.
I think it's Dubai.
Yeah, Dubai to Sao Paulo. And it takes 14 hours, 40 minutes. And so the idea was we were going to get this guy talking for the duration of the flight about Brazilian culture, Brazilian sport, films, telenovelas, food, whatever, everything. Just 14 hours, 40 minutes, non-stop, because it's a non-stop flight. So we called it Non-Stop Fernando. And we literally filmed 14 hours, 40 minutes straight. We filmed on, I can't remember what camera it was. I think it was a tape-based camera. It might have been Digibeta or something like that. I can't remember what it was. But, you know, they were like 48-minute loads. So, like, every time we had to change the tape, he would pick up a camera and film us filming. So we're not breaking.
Yes.
We're just carrying on. But he's filming us, so you sort of become part of the experiment. And this is very much one of those things of, if you don't do it for real, it doesn't count. And the fact that, you know, him filming us, you know, it just all becomes part of the theatre of it, I guess. And, you know, it was intense. It was an intense 14 hours, 40 minutes.
And the rule
time.
was in the challenge that he has to talk about Brazil non-stop.
Yeah.
For 14 hours.
Yeah, 40 minutes. 14 hours, 40 minutes.
14 hours, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And how did you cast him? Who is he?
So actually, he's a TV producer.
Who knows a lot about Brazil?
Who's Brazilian.
Yeah.
And basically, I think he works for like Transworld Sport or someone like, some TNT Sport or whatever. Yeah. And we just cast a guy, just like, let's chat with him. And then we came up with a load of topics. Yeah. And I had the creators in my ear, and they were sort of like, we broke each hour down into 5-minute slots, and like, all right, we'll talk about this 5 minutes, this 5 minutes, this 5 minutes. And like
did he have any awareness of the subject, the topics before the filming? Was it a surprise to him?
Oh God, I can't remember. I mean, it was quite a while ago. I mean, just from general, we'd give him briefing notes, and we'd give him, we'd done a shit ton of research and just sort of created a massive document about, this is what you're going to talk about. This is 5 minutes you can talk about on literature, 5 minutes on music, 5 minutes on this music, 5 minutes on television, and some things you're talking about it and you just rattle on and you suddenly get 50 minutes are gone. And then some things you start talking about and you're like, oh, we're struggling to get 28 seconds out of this. And it's like, it was really, really interesting. And like our energy levels would go. And what was cool about it is it lives on a website called nonstopfernando.com. And
the full version.
Yeah. And if you log in, it takes your computer clock time and goes to that point in the film. So if it's 2 o'clock on your computer clock, it goes to 2 o'clock in his day.
Oh, right.
And then you can skip around and you can go to highlights and stuff. But it basically, you literally the whole thing's up. I don't know if it's still out there. Might be.
So it takes you back in a way to your sort of interactive days of...
very much. Of sort of playing around with interactive films. And, and it's that thing of doing things for real. I made the DOP, I gave him a really hard time. I made him do everything on a 50mm. Because if I had given him a zoom lens, it would have got very lazy. Yeah. And, it would have just zoomed in. Yeah. Whereas 50mm, it's quite tight. And so if you want a wide shot, you have to move
back. Yeah.
And, but it was that sense of, it was like a street photography mentality of like, if you want to get closer, move closer. And, I like that. Could have done it on a 35, but then I think you don't get the portraiture.
The portrait, yeah.
So, I mean, you do, but it's a different thing, right? And it would have all been a bit too wide and baggy, whereas the 50 just gave it a really lovely sense of, you get a nice portrait.
It feels honest and you're
and then
in
you
his thoughts.
Walk back and you get a nice wide shot.
Yeah.
And it made his life harder. It made everyone's life harder, but it was sort of the purity of intent of doing it for real, doing it on one single lens, 50mm, sort of the classic sort of, eyeball, whatever, unless you're Leica and you think it's a 43 or whatever. I don't know. But it had a real sense of purity and just keeping it really pure. And then
it's like almost like an art happening, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess, I don't know. I really struggle with I don't take myself very seriously, and I often think, would my career be in a different place if I was sort of more, like if I wore more berets and sort of more riddles? And I don't know. I mean, I love where my career is at, and I love that I get to, I get to fuck about. Yeah,
but it seems like your career is kind of a reflection of who you are as a person as well, and that's why you're successful at it, because it's a pure kind of, you're doing stuff that interests you, and I mean, you can maybe try and do kind of more worthy stuff if you deem that to be more worthy, but that passion, youthful kind of passion you have for it might not be there. So
yes, and I think that I love what I do, and it took me a while to find my groove, I suppose. I started off doing sort of trying to do comedy stuff, and whilst I can tell a joke and I'm quite funny, I'm not pure comedy. So you get like directors who are pure comedy, who eat and breathe it, and I'm never going to get a script. I'm never going to win a script against them. And then I was like, oh, well, that's not, and then I found my niche with cars, and I'd sort of managed to, and the sort of a TV stuff, and that's pushed my career in other places and really found my groove, and I really enjoy where I am now. And yes, it is very honest of where I am. And, you're right. I'm not ever going to do, stuff that's not me, because it just, I wouldn't be any good at it. I look at other directors and I can respect what they do and love what they do, and almost feel a little bit jealous. Like, oh, I could love to be able to do that, but I know in my heart I'm not wired that way. And so, I mean, that, I guess, took me a while to A, accept, and B, figure out.
I mean, I'm at a similar stage in my life of realising who I am and what I'm good at, and being kind of happy with that, and not fighting it anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's that, and that I think that's a really nice, for me, it's been a really nice realisation of, okay, so, and then you start looking at the benefits of what you have, and you start being grateful for what you have, rather than fighting it and trying to be someone who you're not.
Yeah, and you can't do everything, and you can't be good at everything. You can be mediocre at a lot of things, or you can be really good at a couple. And I think it takes the pressure off a little bit. It takes you can relax into it a little bit, and you go, this is what I do. I do, and, it's slightly tricky if there's, trends happen in films and TV and commercials where, it's all about doing things are real, or it's all about, everything's a poem or a song, or everyone's singing, and you're like, yeah, but I don't do that, so I'm not going to work in commercials for a couple of years. That's essentially. Yeah.
But I like kind of the sort of Lucian Freud story of being a kind of portrait painter, and at the time when he started portrait painting, everyone else was doing, I don't know, modern art or whatever it was at the time, and no one took him seriously. Everyone thought he's a has-been because he's just doing portraits, and then he has his moment, he has his time when everyone comes around, because he's sincere doing what he does. Do you know what I mean? And I think, as Bill Burr says, just go out there and kill it every time, and eventually you'll get noticed, right? Yeah. So it's being true to yourself, and that is your career. You've been true to yourself from the child, with the light paintings and blowing up things to forming a career. I think it's hugely admirable and successful, right? I
mean, it's that thing, like, it's taken me a long time to sort of realize that I'm successful. You kind of, and I think that's partly being a director, and partly, just the nature of being a creative human, that you kind of like, you never quite believe, you like, God, someone's actually going to pay me to do this, or you're so grateful, and that breeds this sort of weird insecurity in you. You're so grateful for
it can be taken away. Something you love can be taken away from you.
Yeah, but I think also that you like, it's very difficult to actually, when someone says, oh no, that's really good, who do you trust? And in your heart when something's good, so you have to just trust yourself. There's the amount of times when you go, oh, is this going to work, or is it going to be a stinker? And you're like, I don't know, I think it's not so much about, no one can take it away from me, but I can. It's just that thing of, am I smashing? You look at, oh my God, Steven Spielberg made Jaws when he was 26, and you're like, or Spike Jonze made it, and you're like, oh, you fucking pricks. You're just like, why am I not Spike Jonze or Steven Spielberg? I'm not, but that's fine. They are the anomalies of the world, and that's fine. They're not, I think slow and steady. And I think if you can find a way of finding your niche and finding your, as long as you're not American, I call it niche. Sorry, I'm just like, find your niche and just sort of stick with it and find some longevity with it. You're winning, right? You're just like,
absolutely.
If I can stay working till I'm too old to stand, that's great.
It's been, for me, it's been a really great journey looking at your work and kind of bringing it all together and sort of kind of getting a sense of who you are as a filmmaker and how you developed it all. I'm going to basically go and I've watched some Top Gears and some Grand Tours, but I'm going to go back and rewatch them, and I'm definitely going to be watching Limitless. And I think, long may you go on and make wonderful, kind of exciting car commercials as well. I hope, and looking forward to your feature film, whatever that might be.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to try one, because at the end of the day, I've got the skills to do it. I finally have the skills now, after all the times of going, oh, I need a bit more work. I am at the point where I'm going, I can knock this out of the park. Yeah. And I've got some contacts, so
Yeah, I mean, so that's something to be incredibly thankful for in terms of your career. If the direction was to end up as doing a feature film with a set of skills that would allow you a unique voice and a unique kind of history, like a CV of being able to do something, and for the Hollywood producers to believe that you can do what you say you can do. That's what you built, haven't you? Really?
Yeah, you'd say that, but then, I don't know. They're sort of producers are, they're always looking at excuses to say no. They're really fun. It's a funny world, and it's a funny, I don't know. I think the only way I'm going to be able to get one done is for me to write it, or at least come up with a first draft of the story. It's the only way, because otherwise you're just fighting against the tide of everyone else, or but you haven't done this, you haven't done that. And England's really bad for that, and I bemoan the English film industry all the time, but it's just because they don't love me, so that's fine.
That will be a blessing for you, because it will force you to write something, and it will inevitably be more you than if someone else wrote it for you.
Exactly. So it's all good. But thank you. I've really loved being here, and it's been. I hope you can cut it down. It's something watchable.
We got so many excerpts, haven't we? I mean, this has been great. I think this is and we covered so much ground as well. Okay. And to have all your work up on the screen to be able to break it down as you have done for us is an absolute treat for our guests, for our audience.